Welcome to the National Occult Archives of the British Museum. Tonight, we present 45 chilling supernatural cases from England. These historical case files were recovered from churches, castles and institutions across England spanning the 12th through to the 19th centuries. So turn down the world, open the darkness, and let the forgotten be heard. Case file NOA 1587 M classification. Physician's medical report. Date of statement 14th October 1587. Location Whitby, Yorkshire. Medical report concerning patient at Whitby Abbey. Infirmary Y. Dr. Edmund Cartwright, physician to the Abbey Infirmary, do record the following account of a most disturbing case. A fisherman was brought to our care on the 12th of October, speaking only in fragments. His companions reported finding him wandering the cliffs at dawn, his clothes soaked through despite no rain. When I examined him, his lips moved constantly, though no English words emerged. The sounds he made were guttural, rhythmic, like chanting in some ancient tongue. His eyes remained fixed on the corner of the infirmary ceiling throughout my examination. I asked what he saw there. He turned to me then and spoke clearly for the first time. The words were Latin, perfectly pronounced. Septem annos, sub fluctibus moratus sum. I have studied medicine in Rome and recognized the phrase. I have dwelt 7 years beneath the waves. The fisherman had never left Yorkshire, had no education beyond his trade. I questioned his companions more thoroughly. They admitted he had pulled something from his nets 3 days prior. A wooden chest, ancient and sealed with iron bands. He had opened it aboard the boat against their warnings. Inside was a glass bottle containing what appeared to be black water. The bottle shattered in his hands. Since that moment, he had not spoken English. Each night in the infirmary, he rises at exactly 3 in the morning. He walks to the window and stares toward the sea. His lips move in that same Latin chanting. I have documented the phrases: prayers to gods not Christian, invocations of depths and darkness. On the 4th night, I stayed awake to observe him. When he stood at the window, I saw his reflection in the glass, but the face looking back was not his own. It was a woman's face, pale and drowned, her hair moving as if still under water. I stepped closer, and the reflection vanished. The fisherman turned to me and smiled. Venit ad me insomnis, he said. She comes to me in dreams. I have consulted the Abbey's oldest texts on possession and haunting. Nothing describes a spirit that enters through shattered glass and speaks through the living. The fisherman's wife visited yesterday. She wept when he looked at her with eyes that did not recognize her. He spoke to her in Latin, words about cold and depths and waiting. I have tried every treatment known to medicine. Bloodletting, tinctures, prayers said over him by 3 separate priests. The Latin continues, flowing from him like water. This morning I found him in the infirmary garden. He had walked there in his sleep, his bare feet leaving wet footprints on the dry ground. The prints led from his bed to the garden and back, but his feet were dry, his bedding undisturbed. Only the footprints remained, smelling of salt and deep ocean. I no longer believe this is a malady of the body or mind. Something came from that bottle, something that had been sealed away beneath the sea. It has made its home inside this man, and each night I hear it calling through his lips, calling to the depths from which it came. Dr. Edmund Cartwright, physician, Whitby Abbey Infirmary, Yorkshire, 14th October, 1587. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Report recovered from Whitby Abbey archives. No further medical records exist for this patient. Local fishing records from 1587 document 3 fishermen lost at sea in late October, though names are illegible. The Latin phrases translate to pre-Christian maritime rituals. End of file. Case file. NOA 1692T. Classification. Constable's Incident Report. Date of statement. 21st March 1692. Location. Dartmoor, Devon. Official report on disturbance at Crockerntor, Warm. Thomas Whitfield, Constable of Lidford Parish, do record this account of events witnessed on Dartmoor. A shepherd named John Penhale reported sounds coming from Crockerntor for 3 consecutive nights. I dismissed the first report as wind playing through the rocks, but when 2 other farmers came forward with identical accounts, I decided to investigate. I rode to the Tor on the 20th of March, arriving near dusk. The stones stood as they always had, ancient and weathered. I tethered my horse and climbed to the flat stone at the summit. Nothing seemed amiss in the fading light. I decided to wait until full darkness to hear what the shepherd claimed to hear. As the last light left the sky, the wind died completely. The moor became utterly silent. Then I heard it. A scraping sound, like stone grinding against stone. It came from beneath the Tor, deep underground. I pressed my ear to the flat rock and heard it more clearly. Not just scraping, but rhythmic, purposeful, like something digging. The sound continued for perhaps 20 minutes, then stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, I heard breathing. Not my own, but something else. Something that echoed up through the stone. Slow, steady breaths that seemed to come from a great depth. I stood and looked around the Tor. Nothing moved in the darkness, but I felt watched, felt certain I was not alone. I called out, identifying myself as Constable. No response came, only that breathing, continuing beneath my feet. I lit my lantern and examined the ground around the stones. The earth appeared undisturbed, no signs of digging or excavation. Yet the scraping began again, louder now. It circled beneath me, moving from one side of the Tor to the other. Whatever made the sound was following my movements from below. I stepped off the rocks onto the grass. The sound stopped immediately. I waited, counting my own heartbeats in the silence. Then I heard footsteps. They came from the center of the Tor, from the solid rock itself. Slow, heavy steps, ascending. The flat stone where I had stood began to glow faintly, not with fire or lantern light, but with a cold luminescence that seemed to come from within the rock. The footsteps reached the surface. I saw the stone shudder, saw dust rise from its edges, but nothing emerged. The footsteps simply stopped, right at the boundary between below and above. The breathing grew louder, rasping now, eager. I ran then, abandoning my lantern, stumbling through the darkness to my horse. The animal was wild with fear. Took all my strength to mount. As I rode away, I looked back once. The Tor glowed brighter, and I saw a shadow standing on the summit. Tall and thin, it raised one arm as if in greeting or farewell. I have returned in daylight 3 times since. The Tor appears normal, no signs of disturbance. My lantern lies shattered on the grass, its metal frame twisted as if crushed by great weight. I have spoken to the local priest about consecrating the site. He refuses, says the Tor belonged to older powers long before the church. The shepherd reports the sounds have grown louder. Now he hears them during daylight hours as well, Whatever lies beneath those stones is no longer content to remain hidden, and I fear it will not stay beneath the earth much longer. Thomas Whitfield, Parish Constable, Lidford, Devon, 21st March, 1692. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Constable's report found in Devon County records. Crocken Tor was used for medieval court meetings until 1730s, when gatherings ceased without explanation. Geological surveys in 1890s detected unexplained cavities beneath the Tor, though no excavation was attempted. End of file. Case file NOA 1423H. Classification Monastery Journal Entry. Date of statement 9th June 1423. Location Fountains, Abbey, Yorkshire. Private Journal of Brother Augustine, Cellar of Bois. Brother Augustine, keeper of provisions for this abbey, do record what I have witnessed in the cellars. My duties require me to descend daily to check our stores of grain and wine. For 15 years I have walked those stone corridors without fear. That ended yesterday morning. I descended at dawn, carrying my lamp as always. The first 3 chambers appeared normal, barrels and sacks properly stored. But in the 4th chamber, the deepest and oldest, I found the air had changed. It was cold, far colder than the surrounding rooms. My breath misted before me, though it was June. I checked the wine barrels first, concerned about the temperature. As I approached the far wall, I heard a child singing. The voice was sweet, clear, echoing off the stones. I froze, listening to words I could not understand. Not Latin, not English, something older. The singing came from behind the wall. I placed my hand against the stones, and they felt warm, almost hot. The contrast with the freezing air made me pull back. The singing stopped. In the silence, I heard small footsteps running, receding into distance. But there is nothing beyond that wall except earth and rock. I reported this to the abbot immediately. He accompanied me down after morning prayers. We stood together in the 4th chamber and heard nothing. The air was cool but not freezing. The abbot blessed the space and we returned above. But I must descend again today, as my duties require. I went at midday, hoping daylight above might make a difference below. The 4th chamber was warm this time, unseasonably warm, and written in the dust on a barrel was a single word: stay. The letters were formed by small fingers, a child's handwriting. I had disturbed no dust entering the chamber. No one had descended before me. I backed toward the door and heard the singing again. This time it came from above me, from the ceiling stones. I looked up and saw her, a little girl in a grey dress, pressed flat against the ceiling. She looked down at me with eyes that held no light. Her mouth moved with the song, but her body remained impossibly fixed to the stone. I ran. I am ashamed to admit it, but I ran and did not stop until I reached the church. 3 other brothers went down with blessed candles and holy water. They found nothing. No writing in the dust, no sign anyone had been there. But they all agreed the 4th chamber felt wrong. They refused to stay more than moments. The abbot has now forbidden me from entering that chamber alone. Brother Marcus accompanies me each day. We work quickly, speaking prayers continuously. Yesterday we both heard the singing. Both saw the writing appear in the dust as we watched. The word had changed. Trapped. Today I went with brothers Marcus and Thomas. We found the barrels arranged differently, moved during the night. They had been rearranged to form a pattern on the floor, a circle with a gap facing the wall. From that wall, we heard scratching. Not like rats or mice, but rhythmic, deliberate, like someone trying to claw their way through stone. We recited every prayer we knew. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. Brother Thomas placed his hand against the wall and screamed. He pulled back, his palm marked with burns, though the stone felt cold. The scratching stopped. In the silence we heard her voice again, not singing this time. Speaking. "Let me out." Just 3 words, in the voice of a child. "Let me out." The abbot is searching the abbey's oldest records for any mention of a child's death. But I know what I heard in that voice. Not a plea, but a demand. Not a request for help, but a warning. Something has been held behind that wall for a very long time, and it wants to be free. Brother Augustine, Cellarer Fountains Abbey, Yorkshire, 9th June 1423. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Journal page discovered in Fountains Abbey ruins during 1920s excavation. Abbey records from 1420s mention Cellarer Brother Augustine's sudden death in June 1423. Cause unlisted. The 4th cellar was sealed with stone and mortar shortly afterward. End of file. Case file. NOA 1784. Classification. Prison Officer's Log. Date of statement: 3rd December 1784. Location: Lancaster Castle, Lancashire. Daily log entry concerning cell 13. William Merrick, turnkey of Lancaster Castle Jail. Do record unusual events in the West Wing. Cell 13 has remained empty for 6 weeks since the last prisoner was removed. Standard procedure dictates waiting 30 days before reassignment. That period passed, yet no new prisoner has been placed there. The reason is simple, though not one I can formally report. No man will stay in that cell through a full night. It began in October, when prisoner James Hewitt was assigned there. He was a strong man, imprisoned for poaching, no history of madness. On his first night, he began screaming at 2 a.m. When I opened his cell, he was pressed against the door, clawing at the wood. He pointed to the corner and shouted that something sat there. I saw nothing. He refused to return inside, fought 3 guards rather than cross the threshold. We moved him to cell 9 and he calmed immediately. I assumed fear and imagination had overcome him. Then came prisoner Robert Nash, a smuggler with nerves of iron. He lasted 3 nights in cell 13. On the 4th morning, I found him unconscious on the floor. When he woke, he could not speak. He would only shake his head and point toward the corner, the same corner Hewitt had indicated. Our physician examined him and found no physical cause for his condition. Nash remained mute for 2 weeks before finally whispering what he had seen. He claimed a figure sat in that corner every night. A woman in servant's clothing, her hands folded in her lap. She never moved, never spoke. She only watched him with eyes that reflected the moonlight like an animal's. On the 3rd night, she had smiled at him. That was when he lost consciousness. I investigated the cell's history thoroughly. In 1762, a female prisoner died there, Mary Brennan, sentenced to death for murdering her employer. She was held in cell 13 for 6 months before her execution. The records note she maintained her innocence until the end. No other deaths are recorded in that cell. I asked the older turnkeys about Mary Brennan. One remembered her, said she sat in the corner of her cell constantly, never moved, never spoke to the guards, just sat with her hands folded, watching everyone who passed. Last week, against my recommendation, we placed a new prisoner in cell 13, Daniel Frost, condemned for theft, a man who claimed to fear nothing. I checked on him at midnight. He sat on his bench, staring at the corner. When I asked if all was well, he did not look at me. "She's here," he said quietly. "Who is here?" I asked. "The woman, in the corner. She's been here since dark." I looked where he indicated and saw only stone wall and shadow. "Describe her," I said. "Servant's dress, brown hair, hands in her lap. She hasn't moved. She's just watching me. Why won't she move?" I recognized the description immediately. Before I could respond, Frost stood suddenly. "She's standing up," he whispered. His eyes tracked something moving across the cell. "She's coming closer." I opened the cell door. "Come out, now." Frost backed toward me, his eyes still fixed on something I could not see. As he crossed the threshold, he stopped. "She's smiling," he said. Then he fainted. We have left cell 13 empty since that night. I enter it daily to check the space. The corner where 3 men claim to see her shows no signs of disturbance. But the air there feels different, heavier somehow. And twice I have found the stone bench moved from its usual position, moved to face the corner, as if someone had been sitting there. Sitting and watching the empty space where Mary Brennan died, claiming her innocence. I have requested the cell be permanently sealed. The request has been denied due to overcrowding. But I will not place another prisoner in cell 13. Some spaces are meant to remain empty. William Merrick, Turnkey, Lancaster Castle, Lancashire. 3rd December 1784. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Prison log retrieved from Lancaster Castle archives. Cell 13 was sealed in 1802 without explanation, remaining closed until the prison's conversion to a museum. Multiple visitors in the 1900s reported feeling watched in that section of the West Wing. End of file. Case file. NOA 1536K. Classification. Village Doctor's Case Notes. Date of statement. 17th August. 1536. Location, Avebury, Wiltshire. Medical notes regarding patient in Avebury village. Dr. Peter Harcourt, physician to the manor. Do record a case that defies medical explanation. The patient is Sarah Blackwood, age 24, wife of a stonemason. She presented 3 weeks ago complaining of sleeplessness. I prescribed valerian root and assumed the matter settled. She returned yesterday in a state of severe distress. Her husband accompanied her, equally disturbed. They both reported the same phenomenon. Each night, Sarah walks in her sleep to the stone circle. Her husband wakes to find their bed empty, the door standing open. He follows and always finds her, among the standing stones. She stands in the exact center of the circle, her arms raised to the sky. When he approaches, she speaks without waking. The words are not English, not any language he recognizes. He demonstrated the sounds for me, guttural and rhythmic. I recognized elements of ancient Celtic speech, though I am no scholar of such things. The husband reports that when he tries to lead her home, she resists violently. She has bruised his arms, scratched his face, fighting to remain among the stones. Eventually, she collapses and he carries her home. In the morning, she remembers nothing. This has occurred every night for 2 weeks. I prescribed stronger sedatives and bound her ankle to the bedpost with soft cloth. The husband returned this morning. Last night, Sarah had chewed through the cloth binding and escaped. He found her at the stones again. But this time, she was not alone. 3 other village women stood there with her, all with arms raised, all speaking in that same unknown tongue. When dawn came, all 4 collapsed simultaneously. None remember how they came to be there. I examined Sarah again today. Her pupils were widely dilated despite the bright afternoon. Her pulse raced far beyond normal. When I passed my hand before her eyes, she did not blink. She sat perfectly still, her gaze fixed on something I could not see. Then she spoke, her voice completely flat. "They are calling." I asked who called. "The ones who sleep beneath. They want to wake. They want to remember." I asked what they wanted to remember. How to be alive. Then she blinked and seemed to return to herself. She looked at me in confusion, unaware she had spoken. I have consulted with Father Benedict about the matter. He insists the women are possessed and require exorcism. But this feels different from possession cases I have studied. There is no malevolence in Sarah's behavior, no hatred or violence, only a compulsion, a calling she cannot resist. I visited the stone circle today at noon. The grass within the circle is dead, though it is summer, brown and withered, as if winter had come only to that specific space. I stood in the center, where the women gather. The ground felt warm beneath my feet, warmer than the surrounding earth. I heard a sound then, very faint, a humming, coming from deep underground, like many voices singing in unison, muffled by layers of soil and rock. I pressed my ear to the ground and the humming grew louder. Not quite words, but patterns, rhythms that pulled at something in my mind. I found myself wanting to close my eyes, to lie down on that warm earth, to sleep and listen to the singing beneath. I fled the circle before the compulsion grew stronger. That night, I watched Sarah's house from a distance. Just after midnight, they walked in perfect synchronization, their footsteps falling in the same rhythm. I followed, but did not intervene. At the circle, they arranged themselves in specific positions. Each woman stood before a different stone, palms pressed against the ancient rock. The humming I had heard earlier grew loud enough to shake the air. The women began to sway, their lips moving in silent speech. Then the stones began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, a blue-green light emanating from within the rock itself. The light pulsed in time with the humming, and beneath it all, I heard something else. Breathing, slow and deep, like something vast awakening from a long sleep. I ran then, back to the safety of the manor. This morning, the women remember nothing, but their hands are marked with symbols, burned into their palms. Symbols that match carvings on the ancient stones. Dr. Peter Harcourt, physician, Avebury Manor, Wiltshire, 17th August, 1536. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Case notes recovered from Avebury Parish records. Local folklore mentions the singing stones and warns against sleeping near the circle. The humming phenomenon has been reported by visitors as recently as 1968, though attributed to wind patterns. End of file. Case file. NOA 1647B. Classification. Lighthouse Keeper's Report. Date of statement 11th January 1647. Location Longstone Lighthouse, Northumberland. Incident report from Lighthouse Station Y, Robert Fenwick, Keeper of Longstone Light. Do record events that threaten my ability to maintain this station. I have kept this light for 12 years without incident. I know every sound the wind makes through the rocks. I know the patterns of the waves, the cries of the seabirds. What I have heard these past 10 nights is none of those things. It began on the 1st of January, during the dark of the moon. I was in the lamp room, maintaining the light, when I heard singing, a woman's voice, clear and beautiful, coming from the rocks below. I thought perhaps a ship had wrecked and someone clung to the reef. I took my lantern and descended to investigate. The rocks were empty, the sea calm, but the singing continued, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. I called out, identifying myself. The singing stopped mid-phrase. In the silence that followed, I heard my own name spoken. Robert Fenwick. The voice came from directly behind me. I spun around but stood alone on the rocks. Robert Fenwick, keeper of the light. Now the voice came from above, from the lamp room I had just left. I climbed back up, my heart racing. The lamp room was empty, the light burning steadily, but written in the condensation on the glass was a single word: help. I wiped it away and locked myself in my quarters for the night. The singing resumed at dawn. This time it came from inside the lighthouse, from the stairs. A woman's voice, singing a lullaby in words I did not know. I searched every level and found no one. Each night the singing returns. Each night it comes from a different location. The stairs, the lamp room, the storage cellar, even from within the walls themselves. And each night I hear my name called in that same voice. On the 5th night I saw her. I was ascending to tend the lamp when she appeared on the landing above. A woman in a white dress, her hair unbound and hanging wet. She looked down at me with eyes that held no color. "Help me," she said. Then she turned and walked into the wall, disappearing into solid stone. I examined the wall and found it unmarked, no door or opening. I have kept records of every voice I hear. The singing is always the same melody, though I cannot place its origin. But now I hear other things as well. Footsteps in the lamp room when I am below. Doors closing on levels where I am the only living soul. Water dripping constantly, though there are no leaks. This morning, I found seawater pooled on the floor of the lamp room. The pool formed the shape of a woman lying down. I mopped it away, but it returned within the hour. I have sent word to the mainland requesting a replacement keeper. The reply came today by supply boat. No replacement can be found. I must maintain the light. Last night was the worst yet. I was woken at 3 by the sound of someone climbing the stairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps, accompanied by dripping water. The steps reached my door and stopped. I held my breath, waiting. A woman's voice spoke through the door. "Let me in, Robert. I am so cold." I did not answer. "I've been in the water so long, please let me in." The door handle turned slowly. I had locked it, but the mechanism moved anyway. The door opened. She stood in the corridor, water streaming from her dress and hair. Her skin was blue-white, her lips dark. "I drowned here," she said. 20 years ago I fell from these rocks. My body was never found." She stepped closer. "I have been waiting in the water, waiting for someone to see me, to remember me." I pressed myself against the far wall. "You see me now, Robert. You hear me. That means I can come back." She reached toward me with fingers that dripped seawater. "I can leave the waves if you help me, if you take my hand." I fled past her, down the stairs to the lamp room. I have locked myself here and tend the light continuously. I can hear her on the stairs, singing that lullaby. I can hear water dripping, pools forming on every level below. Each night she climbs higher. Each night she comes closer to the lamp room door. I have written to the bishop requesting immediate assistance. I do not know how much longer I can maintain this light, not because I lack the will, but because I fear what will happen when she reaches this door, when she asks again to be let in, and I do not know if I will have the strength to refuse. Robert Fenwick, Lighthouse Keeper, Longston Lighthouse, Northumberland, 11th January, 1647. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Report found in Lighthouse Archives. Robert Fenwick's final log entry was dated January the 19th, 1647. He was found drowned in 3 inches of seawater pooled in the lamp room, though no breach in the structure was ever discovered. End of file. Case file, NOA 159-1D, classification. Teacher's Private Journal. Date of statement, 28th September, 1591. Location, Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire. Journal entry of schoolmaster. Regarding disturbed student I, William Thorne, master of the grammar school, do record my concerns about young Thomas Ashby. Thomas is 10 years old, a bright student, son of a prosperous glover. For 8 years, I have taught without encountering a case like his. The change began 3 weeks ago, after the harvest festival. Thomas arrived at school pale and silent. When questioned, he could not explain his distress. That afternoon, during Latin recitation, he stopped mid-sentence, his eyes fixed on the corner of the schoolroom. "Sir," he whispered, "there is a man standing there." I looked where he pointed and saw only empty space. "Describe him," I said. "He wears old clothes, very old. His face is wrong." "Wrong how?" "The skin is grey. His eyes are hollow. He's looking at you, sir." The other students began to murmur nervously. I dismissed Thomas's words as imagination and continued the lesson. But Thomas would not look away from that corner. The next day, he arrived early and refused to enter the schoolroom. "The man is inside," he insisted. "He is sitting at my desk." I entered alone and found the room empty. I commanded Thomas to enter and take his seat. He obeyed, but wept throughout morning lessons. At midday, he screamed. All the students jumped in fright. Thomas pointed at the corner again. "He moved. He walked behind you, sir. He is standing right behind you." I felt a coldness then, a presence at my back. But when I turned, nothing was there. I sent Thomas home and spoke with his father that evening. The man revealed something troubling. 3 weeks ago, Thomas had discovered a leather satchel in their attic. Inside were papers and a journal dated 1620 years past. The items belonged to the house's previous owner, a schoolmaster who had died in the building. Thomas had been fascinated by the journal and spent hours reading it. Since then, he claimed to see this grey-faced man everywhere, at home, in the street, now at school. I asked to see the journal. The father brought it the following day. The entries detailed the schoolmaster's final year of life. He had grown increasingly paranoid, convinced someone was following him. He described seeing a grey-faced man in period clothing watching him constantly. The journal ended abruptly in mid-sentence. The final entry read, "He is here in my room. He has followed me home. I know now why he comes. He wants..." The sentence was unfinished. The schoolmaster had died that night, found at his desk, no marks upon him. I brought Thomas to the school after hours to speak with him privately. "Tell me truly what you see," I said. He looked past me to the corner. "He is here now. He is always here when you are here, sir." "What is he doing?" "Standing behind you. He moves when you move. He follows you." I felt ice in my veins. "Has he ever spoken?" "Once." this morning before you arrived. He said, "Another schoolmaster, good." I closed the school for 2 days while I consulted with the vicar. He blessed the building and performed prayers of protection. When we reopened, Thomas entered carefully. Within minutes, his face went pale. "He is still here, sir. The prayers did nothing." I dismissed the class early and sat alone in the schoolroom. "If you are here," I said to the empty air, "show yourself." The temperature dropped sharply. My breath misted before me. Papers on my desk began to flutter though there was no wind. Then I saw him. In the corner where Thomas always pointed, a shadow darker than the rest. It had the shape of a man, but the edges were wrong, blurred and shifting. As I watched, it moved. Slowly, it crossed the room. It walked behind my desk and stopped directly behind my chair. I felt breath on my neck, cold and damp. I stood and turned but saw nothing. Only the corner remained. That dark shadow returned to its place. I have since learned more about the previous schoolmaster. He too claimed to see a grey-faced man, and before him, another teacher in the same building reported identical visions. 3 schoolmasters in this place, all followed by the same presence. Thomas will not return to my school. His father has enrolled him elsewhere. I do not blame him. I continue to teach, but I'm aware now. Aware of the shadow in the corner. Aware of the cold presence that stands behind me during lessons. And aware that whatever this is, it has chosen schoolmasters for its attention. I am the third. I wonder if I will also be the last. William Thorne, Schoolmaster, Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire, 28th September, 1591 archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Journal recovered from Stratford Parish records. William Thorne continued teaching until his death in 1596. Death was sudden, no cause recorded. The building served as a school until 1847, when teachers refused to work there, citing unexplained coldness. End of file. Case file NOA 1712R. Classification Innkeeper's account. Date of statement 5th February 1712. Location The Angel Inn, Grantham, Lincolnshire. Account of events in room 7. Margaret Hartwell, keeper of the Angel Inn. Do record events that threaten my establishment's reputation. This inn has served travellers for 200 years without incident. Room 7 has always been our finest accommodation, with a view of the High Street. That changed 1 month ago. A gentleman from London took the room for a fortnight. Mr. Edward Graves, a wool merchant travelling to York. He seemed a rational man, well-dressed and educated. On his 3rd night, he came to my quarters at 2 in the morning. He was in his nightshirt, his face white as chalk. "There is someone in my room," he said. "A woman sitting in the chair by the window." I assured him no one could have entered. The door was locked from the inside. "Then she was there when I locked it," he insisted. "She sits perfectly still, watching me sleep." I accompanied him back to room 7. The room was empty, the chair by the window vacant. Mr. Graves stared at that chair in confusion. She was there, I swear it. She wore a blue dress. Her hands were folded in her lap. I checked the room thoroughly, even looking beneath the bed. We found nothing amiss. Mr. Graves apologized for disturbing me, and I left him. The next morning, he departed early without explanation. He paid for only 3 nights, despite booking 14. I thought the matter settled until the next guest arrived. A couple from Derby, married just days before. They chose room 7 for their wedding journey. The bride came down before dawn, shaking and weeping. Her husband supported her, looking equally disturbed. "There was a woman in our room," the bride said, "sitting in the chair by the window, watching us." I felt cold dread then. The same chair, the same description. "What did she look like?" I asked. "Blue dress, brown hair, pale skin. She never moved, just watched us with these empty eyes." The husband confirmed every detail. They left immediately, refusing any refund, wanting only to be away. I moved myself into room 7 that night. I would not ask guests to face what I would not face myself. I sat in bed with a candle burning, watching that chair. The hours passed slowly. At 2:30, the candle flame began to flicker. No wind disturbed it, but it danced wildly. Then it went out. In the darkness, I heard fabric rustling. The sound of a dress settling as someone sat down. I fumbled for my tinderbox with shaking hands. Before I could strike a light, I heard breathing. Slow and steady, coming from the direction of the chair. I managed to light the candle. She sat in the chair by the window, a young woman in a blue dress, her hands folded in her lap. Her face was beautiful but expressionless. Her eyes were open but held no life. She did not move, did not blink. She simply watched me. I spoke to her, asked who she was. No response came. I asked what she wanted. Still nothing. She only sat and stared with those dead eyes. I left the candle burning and tried to sleep, though it seemed impossible. But exhaustion took me eventually. I woke at dawn. The chair was empty. The candle burned down to a stub. But on the floor, beside the chair, was a wet patch. The floorboards were soaked through, and the water smelled of earth. I investigated the room's history through parish records. In 1684, a young woman named Catherine Wells stayed at the inn. She was travelling to meet her betrothed in Lincoln. On her second night, she died in room 7. The record states she died peacefully in her sleep, but an addendum in different handwriting notes something else. She was found sitting in the chair by the window, still dressed, still upright. Her eyes were open. She had been dead for hours, possibly since midnight, but rigor mortis had set her in that sitting position. She wore a blue dress. The physician could find no cause of death. Her body was sent back to her family in Norfolk, but it seems some part of Catherine Wells never left room 7. I have tried everything to cleanse the space. Priests have blessed it, holy water sprinkled in every corner. The chair itself has been burned and replaced 3 times. Still she returns, always sitting, always watching, always silent. I no longer rent room 7. I have locked the door and tell guests it is undergoing repairs. But some nights, I still hear the floorboards creak above the barroom. The sound of someone shifting in a chair, and when I check in the morning, I find wet patches on the floor, shaped like the hem of a dress, shaped like a woman who has been sitting still for hours, waiting for something that will never come. Margaret Hartwell, innkeeper, The Angel Inn, Grantham, Lincolnshire, 5th February 1712. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, innkeeper's account found in Grantham Town records. Room 7 was sealed in 1753 and never reopened. When the inn was renovated in 1889, workers refused to enter the sealed room after hearing sounds within. End of file. Case file NOA 1683P. Classification Mining Foreman's Report. Date of statement 19th November 1683. Location I am Derbyshire. Report on abandoned mine shaft 1, John Ashton, foreman of the lead mines, do record events that forced closure of our deepest shaft. The mine has operated for 30 years, yielding good ore with minimal incident. Last month, we extended the main shaft another 20 feet. On the 18th of October, the miners broke through into a natural cavity, a chamber of rough stone, clearly formed by water ages past. It was empty, save for a pool of black water in the center. The men were excited, thinking we had found a new vein. I descended to inspect the chamber myself. The pool was perfectly circular, about 6 feet across. The water was utterly still, reflecting the lamplight like dark glass. I threw a stone into it to test the depth. The stone disappeared without a splash, without a sound. The water's surface remained undisturbed. I threw another stone. The same result, as if the water swallowed it, silently. We marked the chamber for further study and continued work in other sections. That night, the first incident occurred. Thomas Miller, one of our miners, came to work at dawn. He descended to the new chamber despite orders to avoid it. When we found him an hour later, he sat beside the pool, staring into the water. "She is down there," he said when we approached. "Who is down there?" I asked. "The woman. She's floating just below the surface. She wants me to come down." I looked into the pool and saw only darkness. We pulled Miller back to the surface and sent him home. He did not return to work. The following day, 3 more miners were found at the pool. All 3 told the same story. They had seen a woman's face looking up from the water. She was pale and beautiful, her hair floating around her head. She was speaking to them, they said, though they could not hear the words, only see her lips moving, forming what seemed like pleas. I ordered the chamber sealed immediately, but the men refused to enter the mine at all. They claimed they could hear her voice calling from the depths, calling their names, begging them to come down. I descended alone with blessed candles and holy water from the church. The chamber was exactly as we had left it. The pool sat dark and still. I sprinkled the holy water across its surface. The water hissed and steamed as if I had poured it onto hot iron. Vapor rose from the pool, forming shapes in the lamplight. Shapes that looked like reaching hands, grasping fingers. Then I heard her. A woman's voice, echoing up from the depths. Not from the pool itself, but from somewhere far below. "Help me," she said. "I am trapped in the darkness. I have been here so long." I backed toward the shaft entrance. "Please," the voice continued. "I can see the light above. I can almost reach it. Just a little help. Just a hand to pull me up." The water began to ripple. Something was rising from the depths. A pale shape, ascending slowly through the black water. I saw hair first, floating on the surface. Then a face, pressing up against the water from below. A woman's face, her features distorted by the liquid. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. Her hands broke the surface, fingers spread, reaching upward. I ran. I sealed the shaft entrance myself, piling stones and timbers across it. The men helped reluctantly, all of them pale and shaken. As we worked, we heard her voice still calling. Fainter now, muffled by the rock. "Please do not leave me in the dark. Please." We finished the seal and returned to the surface. That night, every man who had entered that chamber had the same dream. They stood at the edge of the pool, looking down. The woman floated just beneath the surface, her face tilted up toward them. In the dream, they could hear her words clearly. "I drowned here 1,000 years ago. I have been waiting in the water. I am so cold, so alone. Take my hand. Pull me up. Let me feel the sun again. In every dream, they reached toward the water. Their fingers almost touched hers. Then they woke, their hands wet with water that smelled of minerals and deep earth. I have closed that entire section of the mine permanently. The bishop came to bless the seal we built, but 3 men have since left the village entirely. They say they still hear her at night, still hear her calling from beneath the ground, begging for someone to reach down and pull her free. I do not know what we found in that chamber, but it was not just a pool of water. It was a grave, and something has been trying to escape it for a very long time. John Ashton, mining foreman, Iam, Derbyshire, 19th November 1683. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, report recovered from Derbyshire mining records. The sealed shaft was never reopened. Geological surveys in 1920s detected an underground water chamber at the reported depth, but excavation was declined after several surveyors reported hearing unexplained sounds. End of file. Case file. NOA1548N classification. Physician's patient notes. Date of statement 7th May 1548. Location Norwich, Norfolk. Medical case notes on afflicted child. I, Dr. Henry Woolcott, physician to the Earl's household, do record a case that troubles my understanding. The patient is Elizabeth Marsh, age 7, daughter of a merchant. She was brought to me 4 days ago by her frantic mother. The child had not slept in 3 nights. When I examined her, I found no fever, no signs of illness, but her eyes showed severe strain, red-rimmed and wild. She will not close her eyes, the mother explained. She says if she closes them, he comes closer. I asked the child to explain. Elizabeth looked at me with those exhausted eyes. The man in the mirror, she whispered. He only moves when I cannot see him. I asked which mirror. All of them. Every piece of glass. Every reflection. He is always there, standing behind me. I assumed this was childish fear, an active imagination. I gave the mother a mild sedative for the child and sent them home. They returned the next morning. Elizabeth had refused the medicine, refused even to close her eyes. The mother had forcibly administered the sedative. The child slept for 2 hours. When she woke, she was screaming. He moved, she shrieked. While I slept, he came so close. He was standing right behind me when I opened my eyes. I examined the child again. Her heart raced dangerously fast. Her pupils were dilated despite the bright room. She trembled continuously. I decided to test her claims. I took a small hand mirror from my bag and held it before her. Show me where he stands. Elizabeth looked into the mirror, then immediately looked away. Behind you, she whispered. He is behind you now. I looked into the mirror myself. I saw only my own reflection and the room behind me. There is no one there, I said gently. He is, Elizabeth insisted. He's standing right there. He's tall and thin. His face is white. His clothes are black. He never blinks. He just stares. I moved the mirror to different angles. In each reflection, I saw nothing unusual, but Elizabeth's eyes tracked something, moving with each change of the mirror's position. He moves around you. Gael, she said, always staying behind, always in the glass. I set the mirror face down on the table. Elizabeth relaxed slightly. When the glass is covered, I cannot see him. but I know he is still there, waiting. I consulted with Father Benedict about the possibility of spiritual affliction. He agreed to observe the child. We brought Elizabeth to the church and sat her before the polished silver of the altar vessels. Father Benedict stood behind her and commanded any unclean spirit to reveal itself. Elizabeth stared at the silver. "He is here," she said calmly. "He is standing between you and Father Benedict. He is looking at me. He is smiling." Father Benedict saw nothing reflected in the silver, but he told me later he felt a coldness at his back during the entire encounter. I have tried covering all mirrors in Elizabeth's home, but reflections appear in windows, in water, in any polished surface, and in each one, Elizabeth sees the same figure, standing behind her, always in the background, always watching. Yesterday, something changed. Elizabeth came to me accompanied by her mother. The child was calmer, but there was something wrong in her eyes, something flat and empty. "He is not behind me anymore," she said. I felt relief, thinking the affliction had passed. "Where is he?" I asked. Elizabeth looked at me directly. "He is inside the mirror. He has always been inside, but now he knows I can see him, and he wants to come out." She picked up my medical mirror and held it. "He's pressing against the glass, like it is a window, like he is in a room on the other side, trying to break through." I took the mirror from her gently. When I looked into it, I saw something. Just for a moment, a shadow that should not have been there. A dark shape pressed against the silver, as if the reflection had depth, as if someone truly did stand on the other side, looking out. I dropped the mirror in shock. It shattered on the floor. Elizabeth screamed, not in fear, but in warning. "You broke his window. Now he will find another." I have removed all reflective objects from my office, but I find myself afraid of windows after dark, afraid of puddles in the street, afraid of any surface that might show me what stands behind me. Elizabeth no longer sleeps. Her mother watches her constantly. The child sits in corners, her back to the wall, refusing to face any direction where a reflection might appear. "He is looking for a new way through," she told me this morning, "and he knows I can see him. He knows someone finally noticed he was there." I do not know how to help this child. I do not know if this is madness or something far worse. But I have begun to notice things in mirrors myself. Shadows that linger too long, shapes that do not match the room. And once, just once, I saw a face that was not mine looking back. Dr. Henry Walcott, physician, Norwich, Norfolk, 7th May, 1548. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Medical notes found in Norwich Archives. No further records exist for Elizabeth Marsh after May 1548. Dr. Walcott's journal entries become increasingly erratic through June before ceasing entirely. His final entry mentions seeing the figure in every reflection. End of file. Case file NOA 1765L. Classification: Parish Clerk's Record. Date of statement: 30th October 1765. Location: All Saints Church, Hessel, East Yorkshire. Record of disturbance in Church Bell Tower West, Samuel Cornwall. Clerk to All Saints Parish. Do record events in our bell tower. For 20 years I have rung the bells for every service without incident. That ended on the 25th of October. I climbed the tower stairs at dawn to ring the morning bells. The bell chamber was colder than usual, my breath visible in the air. I attributed this to the autumn weather and began my work. As I pulled the first rope, I heard something above me, a scratching sound coming from the bells themselves. I stopped and listened. The sound continued, deliberate and rhythmic, like fingernails scraping against bronze. I climbed the ladder to the bells. All 5 hung perfectly still, no sign of disturbance. But the scratching continued, seeming to come from inside the bells. I descended and completed my duties, though my hands shook on the ropes. The following morning, the sound was louder. Not just scratching now, but tapping. Something tapped against the inside of the bells in a pattern. 3 quick taps, pause, 3 more taps. Over and over again. I stopped pulling the ropes and listened. The tapping matched no rhythm I knew. It sounded desperate, urgent, like someone trying to signal from a great distance. I reported this to Reverend Blackwood. He accompanied me to the tower that afternoon. We stood in the bell chamber and heard nothing. Perhaps rats, he suggested, or birds nesting in the mechanism. We climbed to inspect the bells thoroughly. We found no nests, no animals, no explanation. But as we descended, the tapping began again. Reverend Blackwood froze on the ladder. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "I did, Reverend. That is not rats." We listened as the tapping continued. It had changed now, become more complex. Multiple rhythms overlapping, as if several sources tapped at once. Reverend Blackwood led prayers in the bell chamber. The tapping stopped during the prayers, but it resumed the moment he fell silent. I have rung the bells every day since, though it fills me with dread. The sounds have evolved. Now I hear voices, faint at first, like whispers echoing in the bronze, but growing clearer each day. They speak during the ringing, the words emerging from the bell's resonance. I cannot make out full sentences, only fragments. Help. Trapped. So long. Please. Yesterday, young Thomas Cooper accompanied me. He helps with the ringing during festivals and wished to learn the full routine. As we pulled the ropes together, his face went pale. "Mr. Cornwall," he said, "do you hear that?" "The voices?" I asked. "Not just voices. I hear my name. The bells are saying my name." I heard it then too. Among the resonance and overtones, a voice calling Thomas Cooper over and over. The boy fled down the stairs. He refuses to enter the tower again. I rang the bells alone this morning. As I pulled the ropes, the voices grew louder than ever before. I could hear them clearly now, speaking in unison. "We are here. We are inside the bells. We have been here since they were cast." I released the ropes in shock, but the bells continued to swing. They rang on their own, no one pulling the ropes, and the voices poured out with each toll. "Help us. Let us out. We are trapped in the bronze." I ran to fetch Reverend Blackwood. When we returned, the bells had stopped, but scratches now marked the inside of each bell. Words carved into the bronze as if with incredible force. The same message in each bell. "We are still here." Reverend Blackwood has called for the bishop. He will arrive tomorrow to consecrate the bells, but I fear consecration will do nothing. These voices have been part of the bells since their creation, since the bronze was poured and cooled and hung. Something was captured in that metal, something that wants desperately to be free. This morning I heard them even before I entered the tower. The bells rang though no one pulled the ropes. They rang in patterns, in rhythms that hurt the mind to hear. And with each toll, the voices grew stronger. "We see you, Samuel Cornwall. We see you climbing toward us. We know you hear us now. Soon you will join us. Soon you will be part of the bronze. part of the ringing, part of the sound that never ends. I have refused to enter the tower today. Reverend Blackwood rang the bells himself. He came down, white-faced and shaking. They spoke my name, he whispered. They told me I would join them, that everyone who rings these bells eventually becomes part of them. The bishop has been delayed. We have 3 days until his arrival. I do not know if we have 3 days. The bells ring now without anyone in the tower. They ring at midnight, at dawn, at hours when no service requires them. And with each ringing, the voices grow clearer, calling to us, promising us we will never be alone, promising us we will become part of something eternal, part of the bronze, part of the bells, part of the sound that echoes forever. Samuel Cornwall, Parish Clerk, All Saints Church, Hessel, East Yorkshire, 30th of October, 1765. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Parish record recovered from Yorkshire Archives. The bells of All Saints were removed in November 1765 and buried in unconsecrated ground. The tower stands empty. Locals report hearing phantom bells on October nights, though no bells have hung there for over 150 years. End of file. Case file NOA 1619F. Classification: Constable's investigation notes. Date of statement: 16th April 1619. Location: Sherwood Forest, Nottinghamshire. Report on missing travellers in Sherwood Voie. Clares: Richard Pemberton, Constable of Nottingham. Do record my investigation into 3 disappearances. 3 travellers have vanished in Sherwood Forest within the past month. All 3 were experienced in woodland travel. All 3 disappeared on the same section of the old Roman road. The first was John Miller, a tinker travelling from Derby to Newark. He was last seen entering the forest at midday on the 14th of March. His cart and horse were found 3 days later, abandoned beside the road. His goods remained untouched, no signs of robbery or struggle, but Miller himself had vanished. The second disappearance occurred on the 28th of March. 2 brothers, Robert and William Nash, merchants carrying wool to market. Their wagon was found in the same location as Miller's cart. Wool bales intact, horses grazing nearby, no signs of violence. The brothers simply gone. I organized a search party of 12 men. We combed the forest for 2 days and found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no indication of what had happened. On the 3rd day of searching, we made camp near the old oak grove. That night, every man in the party had the same dream. We stood on the Roman road at midnight. A woman walked toward us through the trees. She wore a white dress that glowed in the darkness. Her feet did not touch the ground. She beckoned to us, calling without words. In the dream, we wanted to follow her. We needed to follow her into the depths of the forest. We woke at dawn, all of us disturbed by the shared vision. That morning, one of my men, Peter Hammond, went to gather firewood. He did not return. We found him an hour later, standing motionless between 2 ancient oaks. His eyes were open but unseeing. His lips moved silently, forming words we could not hear. We shook him, shouted his name, even slapped his face. He did not respond. He stood rigid, his gaze fixed on something among the trees. Then he spoke, his voice flat and strange. "She is beautiful. She wants me to come with her. She promises peace in the deep forest. She promises rest." "Who promises this?" I demanded. "The woman in white. She is standing right there. She is reaching for me." I looked where he pointed and saw only trees and shadows. We dragged Hammond back to camp, but he fought us. He screamed that we were taking him away from her, that she was calling his name, that she would wait for him. We brought him back to Nottingham by force. He has not spoken since, only stares toward the forest and weeps. I returned to the forest yesterday with 6 armed men. We walked the Roman road in daylight, searching for any explanation. Near the old oak grove, we found something. A clearing we had not noticed before, though we had passed this way a dozen times. In the center of the clearing stood a single white stone. Carved into it was a woman's face, worn smooth by centuries of weather. Around the stone, the grass grew in a perfect circle, but within that circle, nothing grew at all. The earth was bare and grey, as if poisoned. We examined the stone closely. The carved face was beautiful, serene, eternal, but the eyes seemed to follow us as we moved around it. Then we heard singing, a woman's voice, sweet and pure, coming from deep within the forest. The song had no words, only a melody that pulled at something in the chest. 2 of my men began walking toward the sound. They moved as if in a trance, their faces peaceful. We grabbed them and they fought like madmen. "Let us go," they screamed. "She is calling us. She wants us. We must go to her." We bound their hands and dragged them from the clearing. As we left, I looked back once. The white stone stood as before, but now I saw what I had missed. The earth around it was not just bare. It was covered in small white objects. I retrieved one. It was a finger bone, old and weathered. The clearing was surrounded by bones. Hundreds of them, half buried in the grey soil, all arranged in circles around the white stone. We fled the forest, and I have sealed the road. No travellers are permitted on that section until I determine what lurks there. The 2 men we dragged from the clearing have not recovered. They sit in their homes and stare toward Sherwood. They do not eat, do not sleep. They only whisper the same words over and over. She is waiting. She is calling. We must go to her. I have consulted every record in Nottingham's archives. The white stone appears in documents from Roman times. It marks the grave of a priestess who served the old gods. She was buried alive for betraying her vows, sealed in the earth with her stone marker above. The Romans believed she would call to travellers, luring them to join her in the ground. They built the road to avoid her grave, but centuries have passed, and the forest has grown. The road now runs directly past her resting place. I do not know how to stop this. The men who hear her call cannot resist, and those who follow her into the forest are never seen again. 3 men vanished. Now 3 more sit in their homes waiting for nightfall, waiting for the chance to return to the forest, to answer her call, to join her in the earth beneath the white stone. Richard Pemberton, Constable, Nottingham, Nottinghamshire. 16th April, 1619. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Investigation notes recovered from Nottingham archives. The section of Roman road was permanently closed in 1620. Modern surveys place the white stone marker approximately 200 yards from the current forest path. Hikers continue to report hearing singing in that area. End of file. Case file NOA 1734V. Classification Hospital Administrator's Log. Date of statement 22nd July 1734. Location St. Bartholomew's Hospital, London. Administrative record of ward disturbances Montpoy, Edward Thornhill, Administrator of St. Bartholomew's Hospital. Do record events in the East Ward. This hospital has served London sick for nearly 600 years. In all that time, Few events have disturbed our work as profoundly as this. It began 3 weeks ago when we admitted a fever patient silent, just watching. We moved Price to a different bed. The next patient assigned to bed 12 reported the same vision. A merchant's wife recovering from childbirth. She woke screaming about children standing against the wall. Her description matched Price's exactly. 3 boys, 3 girls, same ages, same clothing, same silent watching. I interviewed both patients separately. Neither knew the other, yet their accounts were identical. I decided to investigate the wall myself. I sat in bed 12 through an entire night, a lamp burning steadily. I saw nothing unusual, but at 3 in the morning, the temperature dropped sharply. The wall in question began to weep with condensation. Water ran down the plaster in streams. I examined the wall closely and found the moisture was not water. It was thick, almost oily, and it smelled of sickness. I called for the hospital physician, Dr. Marcus Webb. Together, we examined the wall by lamplight. This wall was rebuilt, Dr. Webb noted. See here, the plaster is newer than the surrounding sections. We consulted the hospital's building records. The wall was reconstructed in 1665, during the Great Plague. The original wall had collapsed when the hospital was overwhelmed with dying patients. I found a notation in the records that disturbed me greatly. 6 children had died in the East Ward during the plague's peak. All 6 expired on the same day, within hours of each other. They were buried in a mass grave in the hospital yard, but the notation mentioned their beds had stood against the wall that later collapsed. Dr. Webb and I agreed to keep this information quiet. We did not want to frighten the patients or staff, but the visions continued. Every patient in bed 12 reported seeing the children, always the same 6, always standing against the rebuilt wall. Some patients reported the children were moving, not walking, but swaying slightly, as if to music only they could hear. Others said the children were getting closer to the bed, moving incrementally nearer each night. Last week, something changed. A patient in bed 12, a young woman named Catherine Moore, woke the entire ward with her screaming. The night nurse found her pressed against the opposite wall, as far from bed 12 as possible. "They reached for me," Catherine sobbed. All 6 of them reached out their hands. Their fingers touched my blanket. The nurse examined the blanket. 6 small handprints marked the fabric. The prints were made by something cold and wet. The fabric where they touched had rotted through. I ordered bed 12 removed from service. But now patients in the adjacent beds report seeing the children. They have moved away from the wall. They stand in the center of the ward now, visible to anyone in the neighboring beds. Still silent, still watching, but no longer confined to one location. 3 nights ago, I stayed in the ward myself. I sat in a chair between the empty space where bed 12 had been and bed 11. At 2:30, I heard singing. Children's voices, high and sweet, singing a lullaby. The temperature plummeted. My breath came out in clouds, and then I saw them. 6 children materialized in the dim lamplight. They stood exactly where the patients had described. 3 boys, 3 girls, their faces grey and hollow. They wore night clothes from the previous century. Their eyes were open but empty. They sang their lullaby and looked directly at me. One of the boys, the smallest, stepped forward. He raised his hand and pointed at me. His lips moved, forming words I could hear inside my mind. "We are still here. We never left. We are always in the ward, and now we can move." I fled. I am ashamed of my cowardice, but I could not remain. The next morning, I ordered the entire East Ward closed. Patients were moved to other sections of the hospital, but the nurse The singing moves through the hospital like a sickness, and wherever it is heard, the temperature drops, and wet handprints appear on walls and doors. Small handprints, 6 different sizes. The prints of children who died together in the plague. Children who were buried without names, without prayers. Children who seem to be reclaiming the hospital where they suffered. I have requested the bishop consecrate the entire building, but I fear consecration will not help. These children are not evil. They are not demons. They are simply lost. And they have waited in the walls for 70 years. Now they have learned they can step out. And I do not know how to make them rest. Edward Thornhill, Hospital Administrator, St. Bartholomew's Hospital, London, 22nd July 1734. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, administrative log recovered from hospital archives. The East Ward remained closed until 1802, when the entire section was demolished. During demolition, workers found 6 small skeletons buried in the wall's foundation, arranged in a line. End of file. Case file NOA 1572, S classification. Librarian's personal account. Date of statement: 11th March 1572. Location: Bodleian Library, Oxford. Private account of events in the manuscript room. Thomas Ashford, Keeper of Manuscripts. Do record disturbances in my care of the library's oldest texts. I have served this library for 18 years without incident. My work requires solitude, silence, and careful attention to preservation. Last month, these requirements were disturbed. I was cataloguing a collection of medieval manuscripts acquired from a dissolved monastery. The text dated from the 13th century, primarily religious in nature. Among them was a journal written by a monk named Brother Aldrich. The journal's final entries describe visions that plagued him. He claimed to see a figure standing in the monastery library, a tall man in scholar's robes, always reading the same book. Brother Aldrich wrote that the figure never turned pages, never looked up, never acknowledged anyone's presence. But whenever Brother Aldrich entered the library, the figure was there, always in the same position, always reading. The journal ended abruptly with a single line. He looked at me today. His face was mine. I found this unsettling, but attributed it to medieval superstition. I placed the journal with the other manuscripts in the vault. That night, I stayed late to complete my cataloguing. The library was empty, the students and fellows having departed hours before. I worked by candlelight, the only sound the scratch of my pen. Then I heard pages turning. The sound came from the manuscript vault. I rose and approached the vault door. It stood slightly ajar. Though I had locked it myself, I pushed it open and looked inside. A figure stood in the corner, his back to me. He wore scholar's robes of an ancient style. He held a book, and his head was bent over it as if reading. "The library is closed," I called. "You must leave." The figure did not respond. I stepped into the vault. "Did you hear me? You cannot be here." Still no response. I moved closer and reached out to touch his shoulder. My hand passed through him, through robes and flesh and bone, touching only cold air. The figure vanished. I stood alone in the vault, my hand still extended. On the reading stand before me lay Brother Aldrich's journal, open to the final page. The page I had read just hours before, but now there were new words written below the last entry. Fresh ink, still wet. "You see me now. You are the new keeper. I will wait for you as I waited for him." I fled the vault and locked it securely. I did not sleep that night. The next evening, I returned with a fellow scholar, Dr. Edmund Wright. I showed him the journal and the new words. But the page was blank below Brother Aldrich's final entry. The ink I had seen was gone. Dr. Wright looked at me with concern. "Perhaps you need rest, Thomas. This work can strain the mind." But I knew what I had seen. I began researching Brother Aldrich and his monastery. I found records of his death in 1287. He was found in the monastery library, collapsed at a reading desk. The book before him was open, but no one could determine what he had been reading. The pages appeared blank to everyone who looked. I also found something else. 3 previous keepers of manuscripts at this library had reported identical experiences. A figure in the vault, a journal that wrote itself, warnings about being watched. 2 of those keepers had died at their reading desks, found slumped over books with blank pages. The 3rd had simply vanished from the library one night, never seen again. I debated leaving my position, but I am a man of learning, not superstition. I resolved to face this rationally. Last night, I stayed late again. I brought the journal to my reading desk. I sat with it for 3 hours, waiting. At midnight, I heard the pages turning in the vault. I did not flee this time. I opened the vault door deliberately. The figure stood in the same corner, reading the same invisible book. I approached until I stood directly beside him. "Who are you?" I asked. The figure slowly raised his head. He turned to look at me. His face was my own, not similar, not reminiscent, identical in every detail. My features, my eyes, my expression. He looked at me with my own face and smiled. "I am the keeper," he said in my voice. "I have always been the keeper. I will always be the keeper." He closed his book and held it out to me. "Take it, read it, learn what I learned." I looked down at the book in his hands. The pages were blank, but I could see words appearing as I watched. My own name written over and over. Thomas Ashford, keeper of manuscripts, forever. I ran from the vault. I ran from the library. I have not returned. I have sent word that I am ill and cannot fulfill my duties. But I know I will have to return. The library calls to me. The vault waits. And the figure with my face stands in the corner, reading the book that has my name on every page, waiting for me to understand, waiting for me to become what he already is, the eternal keeper, the one who never leaves. Thomas Ashford, keeper of manuscripts, Bodleian Library, Oxford, 11th March, 1572. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Accounts recovered from private papers. Thomas Ashford returned to work 2 weeks later and served as keeper for 30 years. He was found dead at his reading desk in 1602, slumped over a blank book. End of file. Case file NOA1698Q. Classification: Asylum Doctor's Notes. Date of statement: 4th September 1698. Location: Bethlem Royal Hospital, London. Medical observations on patient in long-term care. I, Dr. Jonathan Pearce, physician to Bethlem Hospital, do record observations of a singular patient. The patient is Henry Blackwell, age 36, admitted 4 months ago. He was found wandering Cheapside at dawn, speaking to people no one else could see. His family reported he had been normal until visiting his late father's house. The house had been empty for 3 months since his father's death. Blackwell was to assess the property for sale. He entered alone and emerged 6 hours later in his current state. When admitted, he was lucid enough to describe what occurred. He had found the house exactly as his father left it. Nothing disturbed, nothing stolen. But in every room, he saw people. Strangers in period clothing, going about daily activities. A woman cooking in the kitchen, though the hearth was cold. A man reading in the study, though no books were open. Children playing in the corridor, though no toys were present. Blackwell said he spoke to them, but they did not acknowledge him. They continued their activities as if he did not exist. He searched the entire house and counted 14 separate figures. None of them his father. All of them engaged in ordinary tasks. All of them oblivious to his presence. When he tried to leave, he found the door would not open. The windows were sealed shut. He was trapped with these silent figures for 6 hours. During that time, he watched them carefully. They repeated the same actions endlessly. The woman in the kitchen stirred the same phantom pot. The man in the study turned the same invisible page. The children ran the same circuit through the corridors. Then, as evening fell, they all stopped simultaneously. Every figure turned to look at him. 14 pairs of eyes fixed on him at once. They began to speak in unison. "You see us now. You are part of the house. You cannot leave." Blackwell screamed and threw himself at the door. It opened easily. He ran into the street and has been haunted ever since, for he still sees them. The 14 figures from his father's house. They follow him everywhere. To his home, to the street, now to this asylum. They stand in corners, sit in chairs, walk through walls. Always silent except when they speak in unison. Always repeating the same words. "You are part of the house now. You cannot leave." I've observed Blackwell for 4 months. He is sane by all measures I can apply. He speaks rationally, understands his situation, shows no signs of delusion. Except for these figures he insists are present. Yesterday, I decided to test his claims. I asked him to describe everyone in the room. He described me accurately. Then he described 14 others. He gave specific details. Their clothing, their positions, their expressions. I wrote down everything he said. Then I researched the history of his father's house. The house was built in 1590. I found records of all previous occupants. 14 people died in that house over the past 100 years. Each person Blackwell described matched death records exactly. Their clothing matched their period. Their positions matched how they died. The woman in the kitchen died of fever while cooking. The man in the study died at his desk of heart failure. The children died of plague in the corridor. Every figure Blackwell sees is someone who died in that house. I shared this discovery with him. He showed no surprise. "I know," he said. "They told me. They showed me where each of them died. They made me stand on those spots. They said I will join them eventually. I asked what he meant. The house wants more, he explained. It collects people who die within its walls. They never leave. They just repeat their final days forever. And it wants me to come back. I assured him he would not return to that house. I have to, he said. They call to me every night. The pull grows stronger. One day, I will walk back there. And when I die, I will join them. I will become the 15th figure. This morning, Blackwell was found in the corridor outside his room. He stood perfectly still, facing the wall. When nurses approached, he did not respond. He remained frozen in that position for 3 hours. When he finally moved, he turned to me with empty eyes. They are teaching me, he said. Teaching me how to stay in one place, how to repeat the same moment forever. They are preparing me for when I return. I have increased his supervision, but I fear supervision will not help. Last night, I checked on him at midnight. He stood at his window, looking toward the east, toward the location of his father's house. They are waiting, he whispered, all 14 of them, standing in the rooms, waiting for me to come home. I asked why he did not simply refuse, because forever. This morning, Blackwell's room was empty. The door was locked from the inside. The window was sealed, but he was gone. I have sent word to his father's house. I fear what they will find there, or rather, what they will not see. But what Blackwell now sees for eternity. Dr. Jonathan Pearce, physician, Bethlehem Royal Hospital, London, 4th September 1698. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Medical notes found in hospital records. Henry Blackwell's body was never recovered. His father's house was demolished in 1710, after 5 subsequent owners reported seeing 15 figures in the rooms, all engaged in repetitive actions, all silent except when speaking in unison. End of file. Case file NOA 1749C. Classification: Ship Captain's Log. Entry date of statement: 27th June 1749. Location: Portsmouth Harbour, Hampshire. Ship's log. Concerning incident at sea, I, Captain James Woolsey of the merchant vessel Prosperity, do record events during our return from the Americas. We departed Boston on the 5th of May with a cargo of timber and tobacco. The voyage proceeded normally until the night of June 23rd. I was in my cabin when the first mate, Mr. Harrison, knocked urgently. "Captain, you must come on deck. The crew has seen something." I followed him above and found every man staring starboard. The sea was calm, the moon bright overhead. In the water, perhaps 50 yards from the ship, something glowed. A pale green light beneath the surface, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "What is it?" I asked. "We do not know, Captain, but it has been following us for an hour." I watched as the light kept pace with our vessel. Sometimes it descended into deeper water and disappeared. Then it would rise again, brighter than before. One of the younger sailors, Tom Brewster, pointed excitedly. "There, do you see? There is a shape in the light." I looked more carefully. He was correct. Within the glow, I could discern a human form. A woman, her hair streaming around her as if she floated underwater. Her arms were spread wide, her face turned upward toward our ship. "Someone has gone overboard," I shouted. "Prepare to come about." But Mr. Harrison gripped my arm. "No, Captain, That is no living woman. Watch her." I watched. The figure did not struggle, did not swim. She simply hung suspended in the water, her body slowly rotating. As she turned, I saw her face clearly. Her eyes were open and entirely white. Her mouth gaped in a silent scream, and her skin had the texture of something that had been underwater for a very long time. "She has been following us since dusk," Harrison explained. "Always at the same distance, always watching the ship." I ordered every lamp extinguished, thinking the light attracted her. In the darkness, the green glow became more visible. It pulsed faster now, excited somehow by our attention. The figure began to rise through the water. Slowly at first, then faster. Her arms reached upward, fingers spread. "She's coming to the surface," someone shouted. The crew backed away from the rail. I held my position, watching. The glowing form ascended until she was just beneath the surface, her face pressed against the water from below. Her hands broke through, dripping and pale. Then she spoke. Her voice came from everywhere at once, not from her mouth, but from the water itself. "Take me aboard. I have been swimming for so long. Let me rest on your ship." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse. "Who are you?" I called down. "I was a passenger once, on a ship like this. We sank in a storm. I have been in the water ever since. Please. I am so tired." "When did you sink?" I asked. There was a long pause. The glow pulsed irregularly. "I do not remember. Time is different in the deep. But I know I have been swimming toward the surface for many years, and now I have found you. Let me come aboard." Mr. Harrison leaned close to me. "Captain, no good can come of this. That thing is not human anymore." I agreed with him, but something in her voice tugged at my heart. What if she truly was a lost soul, trapped in the ocean? What Christian could refuse aid? "How can we help you?" I asked. "Lower a rope. I will climb aboard. I only need to feel wood beneath my feet again, to be out of the water, just for a moment." The crew murmured nervously. Tom Brewster stepped forward with a rope. "I will lower it, Captain." He tied the rope securely and dropped it over the side. It uncoiled until it touched the water's surface. The glowing figure's hands grasped it immediately. The rope went taut. Brewster began to pull, but the weight was tremendous. 3 more men joined him. Together, they hauled on the rope. Inch by inch, the figure rose from the water. I saw her shoulders emerge, her torso, her waist. But below the waist, there was nothing. Where her legs should have been, only the green glow extended down into the depths. She was not a complete form, but only the upper half of a woman. The lower portion dissolved into pure light that stretched down into darkness. "Keep pulling," she urged. "Almost there, just a bit more." But as she rose higher, we saw the truth. Barnacles covered her skin. Seaweed grew from her hair. Small fish swam in and out of her open mouth. She was not preserved, but colonized. The ocean had made her part of itself. "Stop," I commanded. The men released the rope. She plunged back into the water with a tremendous splash. The glow disappeared. For a moment, we stood in darkness on the silent deck. Then the glow returned, angry now, bright red instead of green. The figure shot toward the ship at incredible speed. She struck the hull with a sound like thunder. The entire vessel shuddered. "She is ramming us," Harrison shouted. Again and again, she struck the hull. Each impact shook the ship. I heard wood splintering below the waterline. "We are taking on water," came a cry from below decks. The figure surfaced beside the ship. Her face, previously pleading, now showed only rage. "You raised me up," she screamed. "You gave me hope of leaving the water. How dare you deny me?" She struck the hull again. More wood cracked. "I will sink this ship. I will drag every man down to join me. You will all swim forever in the cold and dark." I ordered full sail immediately. The crew scrambled to catch the wind. We began to pull away. She pursued, that red glow keeping pace. But gradually, our speed increased. The glow fell behind, though her screaming voice carried across the water. "I will find you again. I am in every ocean, every sea. I will wait at every port. I will remember this ship." We sailed through the night at maximum speed. By dawn, the glow had vanished, but the damage was done. We limped into Portsmouth with the pumps working constantly. The carpenters who examined the hull found something strange. The impacts had left handprints burned into the wood, dozens of them, as if she had struck the ship with her palms over and over. The wood where she touched was rotted through, not broken. Rotted as if it had been underwater for decades. I have told the port authorities the damage came from a storm. I cannot tell them the truth, that something lives in the ocean, something that was human once, something that wants desperately to leave the water, and something that will destroy anyone who offers hope and then refuses. I will not sail again. I have sold my share of the prosperity, because at night I still hear her voice, calling to me from every body of water I pass. Wells, fountains, even rain puddles. She whispers that she is waiting, that she will find me again, that one day I will join her in the depths. Captain James Wolsey, Portsmouth, Hampshire, 27th June, 1749. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Ship's log recovered from Portsmouth Maritime Records. The Prosperity was scrapped in 1750 due to structural damage. 3 subsequent crew members reported hearing a woman's voice calling from the ocean, all during voyages in the North Atlantic. End of file. Case file NOA 1563M. Classification: Vicar's Parish Report. Date of statement: 9th November 1563. Location: St. Mary's Church, Rye, East Sussex. Report on disturbance. During Sunday service, I, Reverend Thomas Blackwell, Vicar of St. Mary's, do record a profoundly disturbing event. Yesterday was the Sabbath, and we held our usual morning service. The congregation numbered perhaps 60 souls, including many families with children. I was midway through my sermon when young Elizabeth Cooper, age 8, began to weep. Her mother attempted to comfort her quietly, but the child would not be consoled. Her weeping grew louder, more distressed. I paused the sermon and asked if the child was ill. Elizabeth's mother carried her toward the door to leave, but as they passed the 3rd pew, Elizabeth screamed, "He's sitting there. Why is no one else frightened? He's right there." She pointed at an empty space in the pew. Her mother saw nothing. I descended from the pulpit to investigate. "Who do you see, child?" I asked gently. "The burned man. He is sitting in the pew. His skin is black and his clothes are smoking." The congregation murmured uneasily. I looked where she pointed and saw only empty bench. "There is no one there, Elizabeth." "He is. He's looking right at me. Why can you not see him?" I suggested her mother take her outside for fresh air. But as they moved toward the door, Elizabeth shrieked again. "Now he is standing. He is following us." Her mother hurried her out, clearly embarrassed. I attempted to continue the service, but within minutes, another child began crying. Young William Nash, age 6, sitting with his father. "Father, who is that man? Why is he all burned?" His father looked around in confusion. "What man, William?" "The one walking down the aisle. His clothes are on fire." A third child, Mary Whitfield, age 7, stood suddenly. "I see him too. He's coming toward the front. Why is he burning?" Panic rippled through the congregation. Parents clutched their children. I raised my hands for calm. "Children, there is no burned man here. You are frightening everyone." But now 4 more children were pointing and crying. All of them described the same figure, a man whose body was charred black, his clothes smouldering and smoking, walking slowly down the center aisle toward the altar. Only the children could see him. Every adult in the church saw nothing. I commanded the entity to reveal itself, if it truly existed. The church grew suddenly cold. Frost appeared on the windows despite the mild November day. The children's screaming reached a crescendo. "He is at the altar. He is standing right behind you." I turned quickly. Nothing stood there, but I felt something, a presence at my back, radiating cold. I spoke the words of exorcism I knew. The children began to calm slightly. "He is moving away," Elizabeth called from the door. "He's going toward the vestry." I followed where she indicated, though I saw nothing. As I approached the vestry door, it slammed shut, not from wind, but with deliberate force. I heard footsteps inside the vestry, heavy and slow. Then I smelled it. Smoke, burning cloth and something worse, burning flesh. The smell grew stronger until several congregants began coughing. But there was no fire, no smoke visible, only the smell, overwhelming and horrible. I threw open the vestry door. The room was empty, but the smell poured out like a wave, and on the floor, I saw them. Footprints, burned into the stone floor, as if someone had walked across it with feet made of hot iron. The prints led from the door to the wall, then vanished. I dismissed the congregation immediately. Once alone, I investigated further. The footprints ended at a section of wall that seemed unremarkable, but when I tapped on the stones, they sounded hollow. I called for the church warden, Mr. Thomas Gray. Together, we examined the wall more closely. We found mortar that was newer than the surrounding sections. This wall had been rebuilt at some point, filled in to hide something. Gray and I decided to break through. Behind the newer stones, we found a small chamber, and in that chamber, a skeleton. The bones were charred black. Fragments of burned clothing still clung to the remains. We had found a body hidden within the church walls. I called for the constable and the physician. They examined the remains carefully. The physician stated the person had been burned alive, then sealed in this chamber. The constable found a metal plate among the bones. Engraved on it was a name, Michael Ashford. I searched the parish records. Michael Ashford was a vicar at St. Mary's from 1510 to 1515. He had disappeared without explanation. The record stated simply that he abandoned his post. But now we knew the truth. He had been murdered, burned, and hidden in his own church. We gave Michael Ashford a proper burial in the churchyard. The bishop came to consecrate the site where his bones had been imprisoned. We prayed for his soul and asked forgiveness for the injustice done to him. Since then, the children report seeing no burned man. The church has returned to normal, but I cannot forget those footprints burned into the stone. to see him, waiting for someone to finally set him free. Reverend Thomas Blackwell, Vicar St. Mary's Church, Rye, East Sussex, 9th November, 1563. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Parish Report, found in Rye Church Archives. Investigation into Michael Ashford's death revealed he had accused a wealthy parishioner of heresy. The parishioner's family built the wall shortly after Ashford's disappearance. No charges were ever filed. End of file. Case file NOA 1671. Classification: Blacksmith's written statement. Date of statement: 13th January 1671. Location: Salisbury Plain, Wiltshire Statement. Regarding events at the forge, I, Robert Farnham, blacksmith of Salisbury, do record strange happenings at my forge. I have worked this trade for 20 years without incident. My forge sits on the edge of the plain, a mile from the nearest village. I prefer the solitude as it allows me to focus on my craft. 3 weeks ago, I acquired new tools from an estate sale. The tools belonged to a blacksmith named Edmund Price, who died in his forge under mysterious circumstances. His body was found at his anvil, unmarked but cold as ice, despite the summer heat. The tools were sold cheaply, as no one in his village would touch them. I am a practical man, and saw only good steel at a fair price. I brought the tools to my forge and began using them immediately. The hammer felt perfectly weighted, the tongs gripped securely. But on the first night after acquiring them, I heard the forge fire burning. This was impossible, as I had extinguished it hours before. I dressed and went to investigate. The forge was indeed burning, flames leaping high, but the temperature was wrong. Instead of heat, the air around the forge was freezing cold. My breath misted before me as I approached. I looked into the flames and saw something that stopped my heart. A figure stood in the fire. A man working at an anvil that was not there. He raised a hammer and brought it down with force. I heard the ring of metal on metal, though no metal was present. He worked steadily, methodically, as if forging something invisible. I called out to him. He did not respond. I moved closer and recognized him from descriptions I had heard. It was Edmund Price, the dead blacksmith. He continued his work, unaware of my presence. I watched for nearly an hour as he hammered at nothing. His movements were precise, professional, but his face was blank, expressionless, and his eyes never blinked. When dawn came, he faded like smoke. The forge fire went out instantly, though the coals should have burned for hours. I convinced myself I had dreamed it, but the next night, the same thing occurred. The forge burned cold. Edmund Price appeared in the flames. He worked at his invisible anvil, hammering nothing. This has continued every night for 3 weeks. Always the same routine. Always the same blank expression. Last night, something changed. I was watching him work when he suddenly stopped. He set down his hammer and turned to look directly at me. His mouth opened, and he spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Help me finish it." I asked what he was making. "I do not know. I have been forging it since I died. I cannot remember what it is, but I cannot stop until it is complete." He gestured to the empty space on his anvil. "Can you see it? Can you tell me what I am making?" I looked where he pointed. On the anvil that was not there, I saw something forming. A shape made of darkness, solid but wrong. It had edges that hurt to look at, angles that seemed impossible. "I see something," I admitted, "but I cannot tell what it is." Edmund's face, showed the first expression I had seen from him. Relief, desperate and profound. Then it is real. I am not mad. There is something here. I can feel it under the hammer, but I cannot see it clearly. Help me. Tell me what it looks like as I work. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He resumed hammering. With each strike, the dark shape changed. It grew more defined, more solid. I described what I saw. Curves appearing, points extending, the whole thing taking on a terrible symmetry. Edmund worked faster, excited by my descriptions. Yes, I remember now. It is almost done. Just a few more strikes. But as he worked, I began to feel wrong. The air grew colder, heavier. The darkness from the anvil was spreading. It crept across the ground like oil, thick and slow. Stop, I shouted. Whatever you are making, it should not be completed. But Edmund could not hear me, or would not. He hammered faster, his movements frenzied. The dark shape on the anvil pulsed with each strike. It was nearly finished. I could see what it was now, and the sight filled me with dread. It was a key, but not a key for any earthly lock. Its shape was wrong, designed for mechanisms that should not exist. I grabbed Edmund's arm to stop him. My hand passed through him like smoke. He was not truly there, could not be touched. He raised the hammer for one final strike. No, I screamed. He brought it down. The key on the anvil rang like a bell. The sound was not metal on metal, but something deeper, like the earth cracking open, like a door opening in the air. Edmund froze, hammer raised. He looked at the key he had forged. It is done, he whispered. At last, after all these years, it is complete. He reached for it. His hand closed around the dark key, and then he screamed, not in pain, but in realization. I remember now what this is. I remember why I was making it. Oh God, I should have stopped. Someone should have stopped me. The darkness from the key rushed up his arm. It covered him in seconds, consuming him like ink poured over parchment. He dissolved into the blackness. His scream cut off abruptly. The forge fire went out. I stood alone in the dark. On my anvil, in the real world, lay the key, solid and real and terrible. I have not touched it. I will not touch it. But I can feel it calling to me, whispering that it needs to be used, that somewhere there is a lock waiting for this key. And if I turn it, something will open, something that has been sealed away for a very long time. I have considered destroying it, but I fear that breaking it might be worse than leaving it whole. I have locked it in an iron box and buried it beneath the forge floor. But I can still hear it. Every night it whispers, telling me where the lock is, begging me to complete what Edmund started. I do not know how much longer I can resist. Robert Farnham, Blacksmith, Salisbury Plain, Wiltshire, 13th January, 1671. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Statement recovered from Wiltshire records. Robert Farnham abandoned his forge in February 1671 and was never seen again. The forge was demolished in 1680. During demolition, workers reported finding an iron box buried in the floor, but it was empty. End of file. Case file NOA 1582V. Classification: School teacher's record. Date of statement: 17th March 1582. Location: Canterbury, Kent. Record of unusual student behaviour. I, Miss Eleanor Hartwell, teacher at Canterbury Girls' School. Do record disturbing events in my classroom. I have taught here for 9 years without incident. My students are daughters of merchants and tradesmen, well-behaved and attentive. Last week, that changed. On Monday morning, I noticed one student behaving strangely. Alice Pemberton, age 9, sat at her desk writing furiously. But when I approached to check her work, she was not completing her assigned lesson. She was writing the same sentence over and over. "She is standing behind you." I asked who she meant. Alice looked up at me with frightened eyes. "The lady in the corner. She has been there since we arrived. She keeps pointing at you." I looked at the corner. It was empty. "Alice, there is no one there." "Yes, there is. She is wearing a grey dress. Her face is very pale. She will not stop pointing." I assumed the child was playing a game or seeking attention. I told her to focus on her work. But within an hour, 3 more girls were writing the same sentence. "She is standing behind you." All of them claimed to see a woman in grey. All of them said she was pointing at me. By Tuesday, half the class was writing about the woman. They described her identically. Grey dress, pale face, dark hair, always pointing at me with one skeletal finger. I questioned each girl separately. None had discussed it with the others beforehand. They all saw the same figure, in the same location, making the same gesture. On Wednesday, I stayed late after dismissing the students. I sat at my desk and addressed the empty classroom. "If there is someone here, reveal yourself." Nothing happened for several minutes. Then I felt cold air on my neck, like breath, slow and deliberate. I spun around. A woman stood directly behind my chair. She wore a grey dress, her face pale as death, her dark eyes fixed on mine, and she pointed at me with one long, bony finger. I screamed and fled the classroom. When I returned with the headmistress, the room was empty. But written on my chalkboard in perfect script was a message. "Eleanor Hartwell, I remember you." I had written nothing on that board. The headmistress asked if I recognized the handwriting. I did. It was my own, but I had not written those words. I searched the school records for any mention of a woman in grey. I found something that made my blood run cold. 20 years ago, a teacher named Margaret Ashford worked at this school. She died in this very classroom, collapsed at her desk. The records noted she died of heart failure, but there was a note appended by the headmistress of that time. Margaret claimed in her final days that one of her students was following her, a girl she had punished severely years before. She said the girl appeared in the classroom each day, pointing at her, marking her for death. We thought it mere delusion brought on by illness. I found Margaret Ashford's personnel file. Among her papers was a list of students she had taught. My name was on that list. I had been her student 20 years ago. I barely remembered her, but I recalled being punished, once. Forced to stand in the corner for an entire day for some minor infraction. Margaret had been a cruel teacher, quick to punish and slow to forgive. Now I understood. The woman in grey was Margaret Ashford, and she remembered me, remembered the child she had punished. And now that I taught in her classroom, she had returned. But why did she point at me? What did the gesture mean? Thursday morning, I found out. I woke with my right arm completely numb. No feeling from shoulder to fingertips. The physician could find no cause. By evening, the numbness had spread to my shoulder. Friday, it reached my neck. Saturday, I could barely move the right side of my body. The physician was baffled. No injury, no illness, just progressive paralysis. But I knew the cause. Margaret Ashford was pointing at me, and where she pointed, my body died. Sunday, I could not leave my bed. The paralysis had spread to my torso. The physician said if it reached my heart or lungs, I would die. I sent word to the school that I could not return. But Monday morning, my students came to my home, all 20 of them, without their parents' knowledge. They crowded into my sick room. "We see her, Miss Hartwell," little Alice said. "She is standing beside your bed right now, still pointing at you." I could not see her anymore, but I felt her presence, cold and hateful and patient. "We want to help," another girl said. They formed a circle around my bed, holding hands, and they began to sing, a hymn we had learned in class, their young voices sweet and pure. As they sang, I felt warmth returning to my body. Feeling crept back into my arm, my shoulder, my neck. Alice called out suddenly, "She's moving away. The singing is pushing her back." The girls sang louder. I flexed my fingers and they responded. The paralysis was reversing. "She's at the door now," Alice reported. "She looks angry. She's trying to come back, but she cannot get past the singing." The girls continued their hymn for 20 minutes. By the end, I could sit up in bed. I could move freely again. "She's gone," Alice whispered. "She left through the wall. But Miss Hartwell, she said she would return." The girls had saved my life, but Margaret Ashford's curse was not finished. I resigned from the school that very day. I could not risk returning to that classroom, could not risk facing her again. The headmistress hired a new teacher. Within a week, that teacher reported seeing a woman in grey, a woman who pointed at her and would not stop. She resigned after 3 days. Every teacher assigned to that classroom sees Margaret Ashford. Every teacher experiences the same curse. The room has been closed. No classes are held there anymore. It stands empty, the door locked. But sometimes, late at night, the cleaning staff hear singing. A woman's voice, harsh and bitter, singing the hymns she once taught. And when they look through the keyhole, they see her, standing at the desk that was once hers, pointing at the empty chairs where students once sat, marking them all for the punishment she believes they deserve, forever. Miss Eleanor Hartwell, schoolteacher, Canterbury. Kent, 17th March, 1582. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Record found in Canterbury School Archives. The classroom remained sealed until the building was demolished in 1843. During demolition, workers reported seeing a woman in grey standing at a desk, pointing at them as they worked. End of file. Case file. NOA 1796B. Classification. Jailer's Daily Log. Date of statement. 28th October, 1796. Location, Bodmin Jail, Cornwall. Daily log entry regarding cell 23. I, Samuel Croft, head jailer of Bodmin Gaol, do log events in the condemned wing. Cell 23 has housed 16 prisoners over the past year. All 16 were condemned to death for capital crimes. All 16 died before their execution dates. The first death seemed unremarkable. Jonathan Price, sentenced to hang for murder, found dead in his cell. The physician ruled it heart failure. Price was 42 years old and appeared healthy, but death can come unexpectedly, even to the young. The second death raised questions. Thomas Gray, aged 28, sentenced to hang for highway robbery, found dead exactly 2 weeks after Price. Same cell, same apparent cause, heart failure. The physician noted it was unusual, but not impossible. By the fifth death, I demanded the cell be examined. We found nothing unusual in its construction or condition. No signs of poison, no hidden dangers. Just a stone cell like any other. But prisoners kept dying. Always in cell 23. Always before their execution. Always of heart failure. I decided to observe the cell overnight. I positioned myself where I could see inside without being seen. The current occupant was William Fletcher, condemned for arson. He sat on his bench, calm and resigned to his fate. At midnight, he stood suddenly, his eyes fixed on the corner of the cell. "Who are you?" he asked the empty air. I watched, unable to see what he saw. "Please," Fletcher said. "Please do not come closer." He backed against the far wall. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I deserve to hang. But please, not like this." His breathing became rapid, panicked. "You're too close. I cannot breathe. The air is gone." He clawed at his throat. "Please, I cannot breathe." He fell to his knees, gasping. I unlocked the cell and rushed in. Fletcher's face was purple, his eyes bulging. He was suffocating, though nothing blocked his airway. I dragged him from the cell. The moment we crossed the threshold, he drew a massive breath. Air flooded his lungs. Color returned to his face. "What happened?" I demanded. Fletcher was shaking violently. "There is someone in that cell, a man. He came from the corner and walked toward me. As he got closer, the air disappeared. I could not breathe." "Describe him." "He wore the clothes of a gentleman. His face was blue. His tongue protruded from his mouth. He looked like a hanged man." I had Fletcher moved to a different cell immediately. I researched the history of cell 23. In 1774, a gentleman named Edward Blackwell was imprisoned there. He was accused of murdering his business partner. The evidence was circumstantial, but the jury convicted him. While awaiting execution, Blackwell maintained his innocence. He swore that if he was hanged unjustly, he would return. He would ensure no other prisoner in that cell lived to face execution. He would spare them the horror of the rope. Blackwell was hanged on schedule, but something went wrong with the execution. The drop was not sufficient. Instead of his neck breaking cleanly, he strangled slowly. It took him nearly 10 minutes to die. Witnesses said his face turned blue, his tongue swelled and protruded. He suffered terribly before death finally came. After learning this, I understood. Edward Blackwell had returned to cell 23. He was keeping his promise. Every prisoner condemned to hang was being spared the rope, but not through mercy, through suffocation. Blackwell was forcing them to experience his death, the slow strangulation he had endured. I ordered cell 23 permanently sealed. No more prisoners would be held there. But the deaths continued. Prisoners in adjacent cells began to die. Always at midnight. Always of suffocation. Blackwell was expanding his reach. The prison doctor examined the bodies. All showed the same signs. Petechial hemorrhages in the eyes. Bruising around the throat. Swollen tongues. The signs of hanging, though their feet never left the ground. I reported this to the magistrate. He dismissed my concerns as superstition. He demanded the condemned wing remain in use. We needed the space for the increasing number of prisoners. Last night, I stayed in the condemned wing myself. I wanted to see if Blackwell would appear to me. At midnight, the temperature dropped. I saw my breath mist in the air. Then I felt hands around my throat. Invisible hands, but strong and cold. They squeezed, cutting off my air. I could not breathe, could not cry out. I fell to my knees, clawing at nothing. My vision began to darken. Then I heard a voice, not spoken aloud, but directly in my mind. were all guilty. Every one of them deserved to hang. But I was innocent. I died for a crime I did not commit. Now I ensure justice. I spare the guilty from the rope. I give them my death instead. And I will continue until every cell in this prison is empty, until no one else dies unjustly as I did. The hands released me. Air rushed back into my lungs. I crawled from the wing, gasping and retching. I have resigned my position. I will not return to that prison. The magistrate can dismiss my warnings. He can continue to house prisoners in the condemned wing, but they will not live to see their executions. Edward Blackwell will ensure that. One by one, he will strangle them in the night, and his ghost will remain in Bodmin Gaol, dispensing the only justice he knows, the justice of the rope. Samuel Croft, head jailer, Bodmin Gaol, Cornwall, 28th October, 1796. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Log entry recovered from Bodmin prison records. The condemned wing was closed in 1800 after 23 prisoners died of unexplained suffocation. Edward Blackwell was posthumously pardoned in 1812 when his partner's real killer confessed on his deathbed. End of file. Case file. NOA 1645T. Classification. Architect's project notes. Date of statement. 4th June, 1645. Location. Oxford, Oxfordshire. Project notes on construction of private library Y. Master Thomas Wainwright. Architect. Do record events during construction of Sir Edward Pemberton's library. Sir Edward commissioned an extensive private library to house his book collection. The building was to be 3 stories, with shelving for 10,000 volumes. Construction began in March and proceeded smoothly. The foundation was laid, the walls raised, the roof completed. In May, we began installing the interior shelving. The master carpenter, John Fletcher, was supervising this work. On the morning of May 15th, Fletcher came to me in distress. "Master Wainwright, we have a problem in the 3rd floor." I followed him up the stairs. The 3rd floor was dedicated to the rarest books in Sir Edward's collection. We entered the main chamber, and Fletcher pointed to the far corner. "We cannot work in that corner. Every time we try, the tools disappear." "Disappear?" "Yes, sir. We set down a hammer and turn away. When we look back, it is gone." I assumed the workers were being careless. "Your men are losing tools. That is not disappearing. That is negligence." "No, sir. We have watched carefully. The tools vanish while we look at them." He demonstrated. He placed a hammer on the floor in the corner. We both watched it intently. The hammer faded slowly, becoming transparent. Within seconds, it was gone completely. I stood in shock. "Where did it go?" "We do not know, sir. We have searched the entire building. The tools are nowhere to be found." I examined the corner closely. The floor appeared solid, the walls properly constructed. But when I placed my hand against the corner wall, it felt different, colder than the surrounding stone. And I heard something, a faint sound, like pages turning. "Do you hear that?" I asked Fletcher. "I do, sir. It sounds like someone reading." We pressed our ears to the wall. The sound was clearer now. Pages turning, and beneath that, whispering. Someone reading aloud in a language I did not recognize. Sir Edward was summoned to inspect the corner. He placed his hand on the wall and went pale. "I know this corner," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "This library is built on the site of an older building, a monastery library that burned in 1480. Monks died in the fire, trapped in the upper floor. Their bodies were never recovered. He tapped on the wall. This corner would have been part of their reading room. We decided to open the wall and see what lay behind. The workers were reluctant, but they began carefully removing stones. Behind the wall, we found a cavity, and in that cavity, charred remains. 3 skeletons, their bones blackened by fire. They sat in reading positions, their hands positioned as if holding books. But no books remained, only ash. Sir Edward ordered the remains removed for proper burial. But when we tried to move them, something prevented us. The bones were fixed in place, as if welded to the stone. No amount of force would dislodge them. Then the whispering grew louder. It came from the skeletons themselves, not from mouths, but from the bones. The sound of 3 voices reading in Latin. Sir Edward recognized some words. Religious texts, prayers, scholarly works. The monks were still reading, still engaged in their studies centuries after death. We sealed the wall immediately. Sir Edward decided the corner would remain as it was. No shelving would be installed there. The space would be left empty. But the problems continued. Books placed on shelves near the corner would rearrange themselves. Workers would find them stacked in different orders, organized by subject, then by author, then by size, as if someone was cataloguing them repeatedly. And every morning we found ash, drifts of ash in the corner, though no fire burned, the ash of books that had burned 400 years ago. But it appeared fresh each day. Sir Edward hired a priest to bless the library. During the blessing, the whispering grew to a roar, hundreds of voices, all reading different texts. The priest fled, refusing to return. Construction was completed, but Sir Edward never moved his books in. He sold the building and commissioned a new library elsewhere. The empty library stands today. No one will purchase it, because every visitor hears the same sounds. Whispering voices reading endlessly, pages turning though no pages exist. And in the 3rd floor corner, 3 monks continue their studies, reading books that burn to ash, organizing a library that exists only in their memory, forever pursuing knowledge they can never finish learning. Master Thomas Wainwright, Architect, Oxford, Oxfordshire, 4th June, 1645. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Project Notes, found in Oxford Architectural Records. The building was converted to a warehouse in 1720. Workers reported hearing voices reading Latin, particularly near the 3rd floor corner. The CAS structure was demolished in 1845. End of file. Case file NOA1578N. Classification: Physician's Medical Report. Date of statement: 19th September 1578. Location: Chester, Cheshire. Medical report on epidemic of sleeplessness. I, Dr. Richard Ashworth, physician to the city of Chester, do report an unusual medical phenomenon. Over the past month, 17 residents have presented with identical symptoms. They cannot sleep. Not difficulty sleeping, but complete inability. The first case was Mrs. Elizabeth Thornton, age 34. She came to me claiming she had not slept in 5 days. I prescribed sleeping draughts and advised rest. She returned a week later, clearly deteriorating. The medicine does nothing. I still cannot sleep. But that is not the worst part. What is the worst part? Every time I close my eyes, I see him. A man standing at the foot of my bed. He shakes his head at me, like he is forbidding me to sleep. I examined her thoroughly. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hands trembled. She showed signs of severe exhaustion, but there was no fever, no infection, nothing to explain her condition. Within days, 3 more residents presented with the same complaint, all unable to sleep, all seeing a man who forbade them rest. They all described him identically, tall, thin, dressed in black. His face was pale and expressionless. He never spoke, only shook his head. The condition spread rapidly. By the end of August, 17 people could not sleep, all of them deteriorating. Hallucinations, confusion, physical collapse. I consulted with every physician and scholar I could reach. No one had encountered such an affliction. Then I noticed a pattern. All 17 patients lived on the same street, Watergate Street, in the oldest part of Chester. I investigated the street's history. In 1543, a physician named Dr. Michael Drayton lived there. He had developed a theory about sleep. He believed sleep was a waste of human potential. He claimed people should remain awake continuously to maximize productivity. Dr. Drayton experimented on himself. He took concoctions of his own design to prevent sleep. For 3 months, he remained awake. He became increasingly erratic and violent. Finally, his servants found him dead in his study. His eyes were wide open, his face frozen in an expression of terror. The coroner noted he appeared to have died of exhaustion. His body had simply failed from lack of rest. But before his death, Dr. Drayton had written extensively about his experience. His final journal entry was found on his desk. I have not slept in 93 days. I have proven that sleep is unnecessary. The body can endure without it. But there is something else I have discovered. When you remain awake long enough, you see things others cannot. Figures that exist in the space between waking and sleeping. And one of them does not want me to sleep. He stands at my bedside every night, shaking his head, forbidding me rest. I think he is death itself, and I think I have seen him too clearly. I think he will not let me close my eyes ever again. Dr. Drayton's house still stood on Watergate Street. It had been abandoned since his death, but all 17 of my patients lived in buildings adjacent to it. I visited the house yesterday. The door was sealed, the windows shuttered. I forced entry and went inside. The interior was preserved exactly as Dr. Drayton had left it. His study contained hundreds of notebooks, all filled with observations about sleeplessness. And in the center of the room stood a figure, a tall, thin man in black. He looked at me with empty eyes, and he shook his head slowly. I felt overwhelming exhaustion wash over me. My eyes grew heavy, my body weak. But when I tried to close my eyes, I could not. Something prevented it. The figure stepped closer. He raised one finger and pointed at the door. I understood. He wanted me to leave. I fled the house and sealed it again. But the damage was done. That night, I could not sleep. I see him now, the figure in black. He stands at the foot of my bed, shaking his head, forbidding me rest. I have joined my patients in their curse. We are all trapped in endless waking, watching the figure who will not let us sleep. I do not know how long the human body can endure without rest. Dr. Drayton survived 93 days, but his mind was destroyed long before his body failed. I can already feel my thoughts fragmenting, reality becoming unstable. I see things that are not there, hear voices that do not exist, and always the figure in black, shaking his head, keeping me awake. I am writing this report while I still have clarity. Soon I will descend into the madness my patients are experiencing, and then, eventually, my body will fail. my heart will stop from exhaustion, and perhaps then, finally, I will be allowed to sleep. But I suspect even in death, the figure will remain, still standing at the foot of my bed, still shaking his head, still forbidding rest, for eternity. Dr. Richard Ashworth, Physician Chester, Cheshire, 19th September, 1578, Archive Note. Note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Medical Report. Recovered from Chester Archives. Dr. Ashworth died on October the 3rd, 1578, 31 days after writing this report. All 17 patients died within 6 weeks of onset. Dr. Drayton's house was demolished in 1620. End of file. Case file NOA 1729K. Classification: Merchant's Account Book Entry. Date of statement: 11th November 1729. Location: Norwich, Norfolk. Account book entry: regarding shop disturbance. I, Mr. Edward Blackstone, proprietor of Blackstone Fine Goods, do record strange events in my shop. My establishment sells quality fabrics, household items, and imported goods. I have operated successfully for 15 years. Last month, I expanded my shop into the neighboring building. The previous occupant had been a tailor who died without heirs. The building stood empty for 2 years before I purchased it. I had the wall between our properties removed, creating one large shop. On the first day after renovation, I noticed something unusual. A bolt of cloth that I had not ordered appeared on the shelves. It was fine wool, excellent quality, but not from any of my suppliers. I assumed my assistant had purchased it without telling me, but he knew nothing about it. The next day, 3 more bolts appeared. Different colors, all the same high-quality wool, all placed neatly on the shelves as if they belonged there. I questioned my assistant more firmly. He swore he had not brought them. We were alone in the shop, and the doors had been locked overnight. The fabric had simply appeared. By the end of the week, I had 20 bolts of mysterious cloth, all excellent quality, all appearing overnight when the shop was secured. I decided to stay overnight and catch whoever was stocking my shelves. I hid in the back room after closing, watching through a gap in the door. At midnight, I heard movement in the shop. Someone was working, moving fabric, arranging displays. I peered through the gap. A man stood at the counter, measuring cloth. He wore old-fashioned tailor's clothes. His movements were precise and professional. He cut the fabric with shears that made no sound. I watched for 20 minutes as he worked. He measured, cut, folded, and stacked the cloth. Then he began to sew. His needle moved through the fabric impossibly fast. Within minutes, he had created a complete garment. A gentleman's coat, beautifully tailored. He held it up, examining his work. Then he hung it on a rack and began another. I emerged from my hiding place. "Sir, who are you? How did you enter my shop?" He did not respond. He continued sewing as if I had not spoken. I approached closer. "This is my shop. You cannot work here without permission." Still no response. I reached out to touch his shoulder. My hand passed through him. He was not solid, not truly there. I stumbled backward in shock. The tailor continued his work, unaware of my presence. I watched until dawn. He created 7 complete outfits in that time. When the sun rose, he faded like mist. But the garments remained, real, solid, beautifully made. I examined them closely. The stitching was perfect, the fit impeccable. These were the work of a master tailor. I researched the previous owner of the building. His name was Thomas Webb, a tailor renowned for his skill. He had worked alone, taking commissions from the wealthiest citizens of Norwich. When he died, he was found at his workbench. He had collapsed while sewing a coat. The coat was half finished, his needle still threaded. According to his apprentice, Thomas Webb's final words were, "I must finish this order. The gentleman is waiting." But there was no order. No customer had commissioned the coat. Webb had been sewing nothing, creating garments for people who did not exist. His mind had failed in his final days. He could not stop working, and apparently, death had not stopped him either. Each night, Thomas Webb returns to his workbench. He measures phantom cloth. He sews invisible garments. But somehow, they become real. The clothes appear in my shop, solid and wearable. I tried selling them, but customers who wore the garments reported strange experiences. They felt compelled to visit a tailor. They felt their clothes were never quite right, never quite finished. They needed constant alterations, constant improvements. Some became obsessed. They visited tailors daily, demanding new measurements. Their lives consumed by the pursuit of perfect clothing. I stopped selling Webb's creations. I burned them instead. But he continues to make more. Every night he works. Every morning new garments appear. My shop is filling with clothes no one can wear. Clothes that carry an obsession with them. Clothes made by a dead man who cannot stop working. I have tried blessing the shop. I have tried removing Webb's old workbench. Nothing stops him. He returns each night. He sews his endless orders, and the garments pile up. Beautiful, perfect, and cursed. I am closing the shop. I cannot continue operating with this presence. Cannot risk selling his creations to unsuspecting customers. The building will be sealed, and Thomas Webb can work there alone. Forever measuring and cutting and sewing, creating garments for customers who died centuries ago, pursuing perfection he will never achieve. Mr. Edward Blackstone, Merchant, Norwich, Norfolk, 11th November 1729. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Account book entry found in Norwich Merchant Records. The building was demolished in 1780. During demolition, workers found hundreds of garments sealed in the walls, all perfectly tailored but rotted by time. End of file. Case file NOA 1687F. Classification Monastery Scribe's Journal. Date of statement 24th April 1687. Location Glastonbury Abbey, Somerset Journal. Entry of Brother Edmund. Scribe 1, Brother Edmund. Scribe of Glastonbury Abbey. Do record events in the scriptorium. I have been a scribe for 22 years. My work is to copy manuscripts, preserve texts, and maintain our library. It is solitary work, but I find peace in it. Last week, that peace was shattered. I was working late, copying a manuscript by candlelight. The scriptorium was empty, except for me. I heard footsteps approaching in the corridor. I assumed another brother was coming to work, but when I looked up, no one entered. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. I returned to my work. Then I heard scratching, the sound of a quill on parchment. I was alone, yet I clearly heard someone writing. The sound came from the desk beside mine. I stood and looked at the empty desk. On its surface was parchment, and on the parchment, words were appearing, written by an invisible hand. I watched in amazement as sentences formed. Latin text, beautifully scripted. The writing was faster than any human could achieve. Lines appeared in seconds. Within minutes, an entire page was complete, The quill set itself down. The invisible writer stood. I heard footsteps crossing to the bookshelf. I heard pages turning as someone consulted a reference. Then the footsteps returned to the desk. The quill resumed its work. I stood frozen, watching this impossible scene. After an hour, I found my voice. "Who are you?" The writing stopped. The quill hovered above the parchment. Then it began to write again. But now it wrote in English, not Latin. "I am Brother Marcus. I died in this scriptorium in 1442. I was copying the Gospel of Matthew. I died before finishing it. I must complete the work." My hands trembled as I read the words. "Brother Marcus, you have been dead for 245 years. Your work is finished. You can rest." The quill wrote again. "The work is never finished. There are always more books to copy, more knowledge to preserve. I cannot rest while texts remain incomplete." I looked at the parchment he was writing. It was indeed the Gospel of Matthew. Beautiful illumination, perfect calligraphy. "Brother Marcus, the Gospel has been copied many times since your death. Your work is not needed." The quill jabbed at the parchment angrily. "Every copy is needed. Every preservation of knowledge honors God. I will not stop." I tried reasoning with him for another hour, but he would not listen. He simply continued writing. I consulted with the abbot the next morning. He admitted that scribes had reported similar experiences for decades. "We call him the eternal scribe," the abbot explained. "He appears perhaps once a month, always working on manuscripts, always copying texts. We have learned to leave him alone. But surely his spirit should be at rest. Perhaps he is at rest. Perhaps for Brother Marcus, this is peace. His life's work continues, even after death." But I could not accept this. A soul trapped in endless labor could not be at peace. I decided to help Brother Marcus finish his gospel. I would work alongside him, copying the same text. Together, we would complete it. That night, I returned to the scriptorium. At midnight, the footsteps came. Brother Marcus began his work at the adjacent desk. I took up my own quill and began copying the gospel as well. We worked in silence for hours, his invisible quill scratching beside mine. By dawn, we had both completed significant portions. I left my work on the desk and retired to rest. When I returned that evening, I found something extraordinary. My copied pages were gone. In their place was a single sheet of parchment. Brother Marcus had written me a message. "Thank you, Brother Edmund, for working alongside me. I have been alone for so long. It brings joy to share this labor. But you must not sacrifice your rest for me. I will continue. I have eternity." I felt tears on my face. This spirit was not angry or vengeful. He was simply dedicated, devoted to his craft beyond even death. I have continued working alongside Brother Marcus when he appears. I copy texts while he copies his gospel. Sometimes I hear him sigh with satisfaction when a page is complete. Sometimes I find notes he has left me, commenting on my work, offering suggestions to improve my technique. He is teaching me, even now. The finest scribe I have ever known. A brother I never met in life, but one I am honored to work beside in death. The abbot has blessed our arrangement. He says perhaps this is why Brother Marcus remains, not trapped by unfinished work, but kept by love of that work, by dedication to preserving knowledge, and by the hope that he is not forgotten, that his craft lives on through those who continue it. I will work alongside Brother Marcus as long as I am able, and when my time comes, perhaps I too will remain, copying texts for eternity, preserving knowledge that must not be lost. in the company of a brother who showed me that some devotions transcend death. Brother Edmund, Scribe, Glastonbury Abbey, Somerset, 24th April, 1687. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Journal entry found in Glastonbury Abbey records. Brother Edmund died in 1702, found peacefully at his desk mid-sentence. Modern visitors to Glastonbury ruins report hearing quills scratching on parchment, particularly near where the scriptorium once stood. End of file. Case file NOA 1546W. Classification: Gardener's Work Log. Date of statement: 7th July 1546. Location: Hampton Court Palace, Middlesex. Log entry regarding the maze. I, William Thatcher, head gardener of Hampton Court, do record events in the palace maze. I have maintained the maze for 18 years. I know every path, every turn, every dead end. I can walk it blindfolded and never become lost. 3 days ago, I became lost in my own maze. I entered at dawn to trim the hedges. The maze was empty, as always at that hour. I worked my way methodically through the paths. After an hour, I realized I was not where I should be. The hedges looked wrong. The paths curved in unfamiliar directions. I retraced my steps, but found myself deeper in the maze. I walked for 2 hours. Every path led to another path I did not recognize. The maze had changed, or I had somehow lost all knowledge of it. Finally, I found the center. But it was not the center I knew. Instead of the fountain that should be there, I found a garden. A small enclosed space with roses growing wild. And sitting among the roses was a woman. She wore a fine dress of old fashion. Her head was bowed, her hands folded in her lap. "Madam," I called, "the maze is not open to visitors yet. You must leave." She raised her head slowly. Her face was beautiful, but impossibly sad. "I cannot leave," she said softly. "I have been trapped in this maze for many years. Every path I take leads back to this center. There is no way out." I walked closer. "That is impossible. The maze has a clear exit. I will show you." I reached for her hand to guide her. My fingers passed through hers like smoke. She looked at me with those sad eyes. "You see, I am not truly here. Or perhaps I am more here than anywhere else. This is where I died. This is where I remain. Who are you?" "My name is Catherine. I was a lady of the court once. I came to this garden to meet someone. Someone I should not have met. We were discovered. I was accused of treason. They took me from this garden and I never returned. Until now." I knew the story. Catherine Howard, 5th wife of King Henry, executed for adultery. "You are Queen Catherine." She shook her head. "I was never truly queen. I was a girl who made terrible choices, and now I am trapped in the place where those choices began." She stood and walked to the edge of the rose garden. "The maze grows around this spot. The paths change to keep me here. Sometimes visitors find me. Most do not see me, but I am always here, sitting among the roses where I waited for him, where my life ended before the axe ever fell." I asked how I could help her. "You cannot. I am part of the garden now, part of the maze. I will sit here until the roses grow over me entirely, until even the memory of Catherine Howard fades. Then perhaps I will finally be allowed to leave." She returned to her sitting position among the roses. "Go now. The maze will let you out. It only keeps me." I tried to argue, but she would not respond further. I left the rose garden and immediately found the exit. The paths were familiar again. I was out of the maze within minutes. But when I returned later to trim the hedges, I could not find the rose garden. I searched every path, every turn. The centre contained only the fountain, as it always had. No garden, no roses, no woman. I have searched every day since. Sometimes I glimpse roses through gaps in the hedge, but when I try to reach them, the path leads elsewhere. The maze keeps its secret, keeps Catherine Howard hidden in her garden. And sometimes, late at night, when the palace is quiet, I hear singing. A woman's voice, sad and sweet, coming from somewhere deep within the maze, from a garden that exists and does not exist, from a queen who was never truly queen, forever waiting in the roses, forever trapped at the moment her life began to end. William Thatcher, head gardener, Hampton Court Palace, Middlesex, 7th July, 1546. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft work log, preserved in Hampton Court Archives. The maze was replanted multiple times over centuries, but visitors continue to report seeing a woman in old-fashioned dress among the hedges, always near the centre, always sitting among roses. End of file. Case file. NOA 1763L. Classification. Solicitor's case file. Date of statement. 13th February 1763. Location. Lincoln, Lincolnshire. Case file on disputed property Y. Mr. Charles Thornhill, solicitor. Do record the unusual circumstances of Ashford House. The property has been in dispute for 6 months. 3 separate parties claim ownership. All have legitimate seeming documents. All swear they purchased the house legally, but there is a problem. The house has been empty for 40 years. No sales have been recorded in that time. Yet each claimant has a deed dated within the past year. I visited the house yesterday to investigate. It stands on the edge of Lincoln, surrounded by overgrown gardens. The windows are shuttered, the door sealed. I obtained keys from the city clerk and entered alone. The interior was preserved perfectly. Furniture covered in dust, but otherwise untouched, as if the occupants had simply walked out decades ago. I searched the house for any documents that might clarify ownership. In the study, I found an old ledger. It contained property transactions dating back to 1720. But as I read, I noticed something impossible. The ledger showed the house being sold every year. Different buyers, different prices, different dates. But all the sales occurred after the house was supposedly abandoned. I heard footsteps above me. Someone was walking through the upper floor. I called out, identifying myself. No response. I climbed the stairs cautiously. The footsteps moved ahead of me, always just out of sight. I followed them to the master bedroom. The door stood open. Inside, a man sat at a desk. He wore clothing from the previous century. He was writing in a ledger similar to the one I had found below. "Excuse me," I said. "I am investigating the ownership of this house." He did not look up. He continued writing, his quill scratching across the page. I moved closer to see what he wrote. It was a property deed. He was selling Ashford House to someone named Mr. Edward Blackwell. The date he wrote was today's date. "That sale is not legal," I said. "You have no authority to sell this property." He finally looked up. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. "I am Thomas Ashford. This is my house. I sell it whenever I wish. Mr. Ashford, according to records, you died in 1723. You cannot sell anything." He smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Death has not prevented me from conducting business. I have sold this house 47 times since I died. Every buyer pays handsomely. They move in, live here for a time, then they too die, and I sell it again. My blood ran cold. You are killing the buyers? I do nothing. The house kills them. It has a hunger, you see. It needs new residents, fresh lives to sustain it, and I facilitate that need. He returned to writing his deed. You should leave now, Mr. Thornhill, unless you wish to purchase the property. The price is very reasonable, and you would have the house entirely to yourself, for as long as you live. I backed toward the door. I will expose this. I will ensure no one else falls victim to your fraud. Thomas Ashford laughed. You may try, but the house has ways of protecting itself, ways of ensuring the sales continue. After all, it needs to eat. I ran from the house. When I reached the street, I looked back. Thomas Ashford stood in the upper window. He raised one hand in farewell. Then the shutters closed. I researched the 47 sales he mentioned. I found death records for 47 people who claimed to own Ashford House. All died within a year of purchase. All died in the house itself. Heart failure, accidents, mysterious illnesses. No two deaths were alike, but all buyers died in Ashford House. And after each death, the property became available again, sold by Thomas Ashford's ghost to the next victim. I have reported this to the magistrate. He has ordered the house demolished, but when the workers arrived yesterday, they found the door sealed from inside. They could not force entry, and through the windows they saw movement. Thomas Ashford, sitting at his desk, writing another deed, preparing for the next sale. The house remains standing. No one will demolish it, and Thomas Ashford continues his business, selling death to anyone foolish enough to buy. Mr. Charles Thornhill, Solicitor, Lincoln, Lincolnshire, 13th February 1763. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Case file found in Lincoln Legal Archives. Ashford House was finally demolished in 1820. Each marked with a different name. End of file. Case file NOA1627P. Classification: Canal Workers Report. Date of statement: 21st August 1627. Location: Bridgewater Canal, Lancashire. Report on Construction Incident 1. Thomas Millwright, foreman of canal construction. Do report events that halted our work. We are building a canal to connect coal mines to Manchester. The work is proceeding well, with one exception. Lock number 7. We cannot complete it. Every time we dig the lock chamber, we find bones. Human remains, dozens of them. We remove the bones and continue digging. The next day, more bones appear in the same location. This has occurred 15 times in the past month. We have removed enough bones to account for perhaps 30 people, yet they keep appearing. Yesterday, I stayed overnight at the construction site. I wanted to catch whoever was placing the bones. At midnight, the ground began to move. The earth in the lock chamber rippled like water. Bones rose from the soil, not placed there, but emerging, growing up from deep underground like plants. I watched in horror as skeletal hands pushed through the dirt. Arms followed, then skulls, then complete skeletons. They pulled themselves from the earth. 30 figures, all bones and tattered clothing. They stood in the lock chamber and looked at me. One step forward. When it spoke, its voice was dirt and stones grinding together. This is our resting place. You disturb our rest. We will not allow it. I found my voice. Who are you? We are plague dead. In 1349, we were buried here in mass graves. No prayers were said. No markers were placed. We were simply covered with earth and forgotten. This ground is ours. You cannot build here. The canal must go through. Commerce requires it. The skeleton tilted its skull. Then we will ensure your commerce fails. Every worker who digs here will join us. Their bones will rise from this ground as ours do. This lock will never be completed. The skeletons sank back into the earth. Slowly, deliberately, they descended. Within minutes, they had vanished. The lock chamber appeared normal. I reported this to the canal company. They dismissed my account as drink or madness. They ordered the work to continue. That morning, 5 workers descended into the lock chamber. They began digging. At noon, we heard screaming. We pulled the workers out quickly. All 5 had bones wrapped around their ankles. Skeletal hands gripping them, pulling them down into the earth. We cut the bones away, but they left marks. Deep scratches on every worker's skin. No one will work on Lock 7 now. The canal company has tried bringing workers from other regions, men who do not know the history, but within hours of starting work, they see the bones, see skeletal hands reaching up from the dirt. They flee and refuse to return. Yesterday, the company decided to reroute the canal. Lock 7 will not be built. The ground will remain undisturbed. But something troubles me. When I visited the site this morning, I saw writing, scratched into the dirt of the lock chamber. Written in a script made of small bones arranged carefully. It said, 30 rest here, soon 31. One of the workers from yesterday is missing. Robert Fletcher, who had bones wrapped around his ankles. He left his lodging last night and never returned. We searched the canal route. We found him in Lock 7, half buried in the earth, still alive but sinking. The ground was pulling him down. We tried to dig him out, but the more we dug, the faster he sank. He looked at us with terrified eyes. "They are below me," he whispered. "All 30 of them, holding my legs, pulling me down to join them." He sank to his chest. "Please," he begged, "do not let them take me." We tied ropes around him and pulled, but the earth held him stronger. He sank to his neck. His final words were, "They are welcoming me. They say I am the first of many. They say this ground is hungry." Then he vanished beneath the surface. The earth swallowed him completely. We dug frantically, but found nothing. Not his body, not even his clothes. Just bones. Old bones, plague bones, and one fresh skeleton. Robert Fletcher, who had been alive minutes before. We reburied the bones and fled. The canal company has abandoned Lock 7. The route has been changed, but I fear it is not enough. The plague dead are waiting in that ground, and they will claim anyone who disturbs their rest. Thomas Millwright, Foreman, Bridgewater Canal, Lancashire, 21st August, 1627. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Report found in Canal Company archives. The area around the abandoned Lock 7 was consecrated in 1630. Modern surveys show ground subsidence at that location, though excavation has never been attempted due to local superstition. End of file. Case file NOA159-8S. Classification: Music teacher's personal notes. Date of statement: 3rd December 1598. Location, Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire. Personal notes on student instruction. I, Master Geoffrey Talbot, music instructor, do record a most unusual student. I teach harpsichord, lute, and voice to the children of wealthy families. Last month, I was engaged to instruct the daughter of a merchant. Miss Anne Whitmore, aged 12, wished to learn harpsichord. I arrived at the Whitmore house for the first lesson. Anne was polite but seemed nervous. We began with basic finger exercises. Her technique was poor, her timing uncertain. After an hour, I dismissed her to practice. The next week, I returned for the second lesson. Anne's improvement was remarkable. She played pieces I had not yet taught her. Her technique was perfect. Her expression mature. "Who taught you these pieces?" I asked. "No one, sir. I practiced what you showed me. But these are advanced compositions. I did not teach them to you." Anne looked uncomfortable. I heard someone playing them. At night. I learned by listening. "Who plays at night?" "I do not know. The music comes from the old music room, the one my father keeps locked." Mr. Whitmore explained that the locked room had belonged to a previous owner, a music teacher named Edward Ashford, who died in the house 20 years ago. "He was found at his harpsichord," Mr. Whitmore said, "dead mid-performance. His fingers were still on the keys. I keep the room locked because it seems proper." I asked to see the room. Mr. Whitmore reluctantly unlocked it. Inside was a beautiful harpsichord, dusty but intact. Sheet music covered the music stand. I approached the instrument and touched a key. The note rang clear and true. Someone had maintained this harpsichord. Kept it in. Perfect tune. "Who cares for this instrument?" I asked. "No one. The room has been locked for years." Yet the harpsichord was perfect. That night, I stayed at the Whitmore house as a guest. I wanted to hear the music Anne described. At midnight, I woke to the sound of playing. Beautiful, complex music coming from below. I crept downstairs to the locked music room. Light showed beneath the door. I peered through the keyhole. A man sat at the harpsichord. His fingers moved across the keys with incredible skill. He played a piece I recognized, a composition by William Byrd, exceptionally difficult. The man played it flawlessly. I tried the door, but it remained locked. I knocked. The music stopped instantly. "Who is there?" I called. Silence. I looked through the keyhole again. The room was dark now. No one sat at the harpsichord. But the keys still moved, pressed down by invisible fingers, playing the piece exactly where it had been interrupted. I fled to my room. The next morning, I examined the music room in daylight. The sheet music on the stand had changed. New pieces appeared, compositions I had never seen. Original works, beautifully notated. Signed E. Ashford at the bottom of each page. Edward Ashford was still composing, still playing, still teaching in his way. I asked Anne about her nighttime lessons. "I sit outside the locked door," she admitted. "I listen to him play. He teaches me without words. He plays a phrase, then pauses. I repeat it on my own harpsichord upstairs. Then he plays the next phrase. We work together this way. Do you see him? Sometimes, through the keyhole. He is old, with kind eyes. He smiles when I play correctly. He frowns when I make mistakes. But he never speaks." I told Mr. Whitmore what I had discovered. He was disturbed, but not entirely surprised. "Sometimes I hear music at night," he admitted. I assumed Anne was practicing, but the sound comes from the locked room. We decided to open the room during one of the nightly performances to confront Edward Ashford directly. That night, we waited outside the door. At midnight, the music began. Mr. Whitmore unlocked the door and we entered quickly. Edward Ashford sat at the harpsichord. He was translucent, barely visible, but his fingers on the keys were solid, real enough to press the keys, to create sound. He looked at us with sad eyes. "I am sorry to disturb you," he said, "but I cannot stop playing. The music is unfinished. I died before completing my masterwork. I must continue until it is done." "How much more must you write?" I asked. "I do not know. The piece grows longer each time I play it. It has no end. It simply continues, forever exploring new variations." He returned his attention to the keyboard. "Please, let me work. I will not harm the girl. I am glad to have a student again. It eases the loneliness of this endless composition." We withdrew from the room. Mr. Whitmore locked it again. Anne continues her lessons with me during the day and with Edward Ashford at night. She is becoming an extraordinary musician, far beyond what I could teach her. I visit sometimes and listen outside the locked room. The music Ashford plays is unlike anything I have heard. Complex, beautiful, eternal. A composition that will never be completed. A masterwork that exists only in the performance, only in the moment. Never written down in full. Only experienced by those who listen in the darkness. While a dead man's fingers dance across keys he can no longer truly touch. Master Geoffrey Talbot, music instructor, Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire. 3rd December, 1598. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Personal notes found in Stratford Archives. The Whitmore house was sold in 1620. The music room harpsichord was discovered perfectly maintained despite decades of neglect. Musicians who play it report their fingers moving independently, as if guided by an unseen teacher. End of file. Case file NOA1784H. Classification Hospital Matron's Log. Date of statement 15th May 1784. Location St. Thomas's. Hospital, London. Matron's Log regarding Infant Ward 1, Mrs. Margaret Fletcher, Matron of St. Thomas's Hospital Infant Ward. Do log disturbing events. I have overseen this ward for 12 years. We care for abandoned infants and foundlings. The work is difficult, but rewarding. Last month, something changed. The infants began behaving strangely. Every night at the same hour, they all wake simultaneously. They do not cry. They simply lie in their cribs, staring at the same point in the ward. I followed their collective gaze. They were all looking at the far corner. The oldest section of the ward, built in 1650. I saw nothing unusual, but the infants remained fixated. Sometimes they smile at what they see. Sometimes they reach out their tiny hands. I asked them, the night nurses, if they noticed anything. One, Mrs. Sarah Brown, admitted she had. "They are looking at the woman," she said. "What woman?" "The one in the corner. I have seen her twice now. She appears around midnight. She stands very still, watching the babies." "Why did you not report this?" Mrs. Brown looked embarrassed. "Because she does nothing harmful. She only watches. And the babies seem comforted by her presence. They sleep better after she appears." I decided to observe the ward personally. I stayed through the night, seated where I could see the entire room. At midnight, the infants woke as one. All eyes turned to the corner, and I saw her. A young woman in a simple dress. She stood motionless, her arms at her sides. Her eyes moved from crib to crib, watching each infant with intense focus. I approached her slowly. "Who are you? How did you enter this ward?" She looked at me. Her face was young, but infinitely sad. "I am looking for my baby," she said softly. "I died of this in childbirth. They took my child before I could see it. They told me it died as well, but I do not believe them. I think my baby is here. I think if I watch carefully enough, I will recognize it." "What is your name?" "Elizabeth. Elizabeth Marsh. I died here in 1652. I checked the hospital records the next morning. Elizabeth Marsh did die in childbirth in 1652. Her infant son survived, but Elizabeth was told he died. The practice at that time was to tell unmarried mothers their babies had died. The infants were then given to orphanages or wealthy families. Elizabeth's son was adopted by a merchant family. He lived a full life, dying in 1710. But Elizabeth never knew this. She died believing her child was dead, and for 132 years she has searched, looking at every infant in this ward, trying to find the baby she never got to hold. I spoke to her the next night. "Elizabeth, your son lived. He was adopted and cared for. He is long dead now, but he had a good life." She looked at me with desperate hope. "He lived? My baby lived?" "Yes. He became a successful merchant. He married and had children of his own. Your bloodline continues." Tears ran down her translucent face. "I want to see him. Where is he?" "He died 74 years ago, Elizabeth. He is gone." Her hope turned to despair. "Then I'm too late. I searched for so long, and I was too late." She sank to her knees. "All these years, all these babies. I thought one would be mine, but he was never here. He was taken away, and I will never hold him." I felt overwhelming pity. "Elizabeth, you must rest now. Your search is over. I cannot rest. Not until I hold my child. Not until I know what he looked like, what he felt like in my arms." She faded away as dawn came, but the next night she returned, still standing in her corner, still watching the infants, still searching. I do not know how to help her. She will not accept that her son is gone, will not believe her search is hopeless. The infants still wake at midnight, still gaze at the corner, still smile at the sad woman who searches endlessly. I have asked the bishop to pray for Elizabeth's soul, but I suspect prayers will not reach her. She is trapped in her grief, trapped in the moment they told her her baby died, forever searching, forever hoping, forever too late. Mrs. Margaret Fletcher, Matron St. Thomas's Hospital, London, 15th May, 1784. Archive note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Matron's log found in St. Thomas's Hospital archives. The infant ward was relocated in 1820, but visitors to the old wing report seeing a young woman standing in corners, watching with sad eyes, as if searching for something lost long ago. End of file. Case file. NOA1651D. Classification. Clockmaker's Workshop. Journal. Date of statement. 9th of October, 1651. Location. York, North Yorkshire. Workshop. Journal entry on. Impossible clock. 1. Master Richard Whitfield, clockmaker. Do record my work on an unusual commission. A nobleman requested I repair an antique clock. The clock was delivered to my workshop yesterday. It is unlike any timepiece I have seen. The mechanism is extraordinary, far beyond current craftsmanship. But the clock does not tell time correctly. It runs backward. I examined every component. The gears are perfect, the springs properly tensioned. Yet the hands turn counterclockwise, showing time moving backward instead of forward. I attempted to reverse the mechanism, but each time I did, the clock would reset itself. The hands would spin rapidly, returning to their backward motion. Last night, I stayed late to work on the clock. At midnight, it began to chime, but not 12 chimes as expected. It chimed backward from 12 to 1, and with each chime, I felt strange. My thoughts became confused. Memories seemed to arrive in reverse order. I remembered leaving the workshop before I remembered arriving. I remembered yesterday before I remembered today. The clock chimed its final note. Time resumed its normal flow, but I was shaken. This morning, I noticed writing on the clock's face, engraved in tiny letters around the edge. Latin words, tempus fugit, memoria manet. Time flies, memory remains. I researched the clock's history. It belonged to an alchemist named Dr. Marcus Fell. He died in 1620, obsessed with reversing time. He believed if time could be made to flow backward, death could be undone. This clock was his life's work, an attempt to create a device that could turn back time itself. I should have refused to work on it, but I am a craftsman, and the mechanism fascinated me. I continued my repairs. Each night, the clock chimed backward, and each night, I experienced time differently. Memories of the future began to appear. I remembered things that had not yet happened, conversations I had not had, events that were still days away. It was disorienting and frightening. Yesterday, I tried to destroy the clock. I raised my hammer to smash it, but my arm froze. I could not bring the hammer down. Instead, I set it aside and continued working, as if I had no choice, as if the clock was controlling my actions. This morning, I noticed changes. The workshop looked different. Tools were in wrong places. My journal had entries I did not remember writing. I checked the date. According to the calendar, it is 3 days earlier than I thought. The clock has turned back time, or I have slipped backward through days. I am losing track of when I am. Each time the clock chimes, I slip further back. Tomorrow will come before today. Next week will arrive before this week. I am living my life in reverse, and the clock keeps turning backward, taking me with it. I will finish this journal entry now, because soon I will forget I wrote it. Soon I will forget today. I will move backward through my life, unmaking each day, until I reach what? The beginning? Birth? Non-existence? I do not know. I only know I cannot stop the clock, cannot escape its backward pull. Master Richard Whitfield, Clockmaker, York, North Yorkshire. 9th October, 1651. Archive note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Journal entry found in York Clockmaker Archives. Master Whitfield disappeared in October 1651. His workshop was found empty, all tools missing. The only item remaining was an antique clock, its hands frozen at midnight, running backward. End of file. Case file NOA 173 AAM. Classification Innkeeper's account. Date of statement 26th March 1738. Location The George Inn, Southwark, London. Account of events in room 12. I, Mr. Edward Marsh, innkeeper of the George, do account for disturbances in room 12. This inn has operated for 300 years. Room 12 has always been our quietest accommodation, until last month. A gentleman took the room for a fortnight, Mr. James Hartwell, travelling from Norwich on business. On his third night, he came to my office pale and shaking. "There are voices in my room," he said, "multiple people talking, but when I look, I am alone." I assured him no one else had keys. "I know I'm alone, but I hear them, clear as day, having conversations I cannot understand." He described the voices, men and women, speaking in accents from different regions, different time periods, he thought. Some sounded like they came from centuries past. I investigated the room personally. I heard nothing unusual. But Mr. Hartwell refused to stay another night. The next guest reported the same phenomenon, voices in the room when no one was there. I have since stayed in room 12 myself. At first, I heard nothing. Then, around midnight, the voices began. Faint at first, then growing clearer. I heard a woman asking about the price of the room, a man complaining about the food, a child crying for its mother, all overlapping, speaking at once. Different conversations from different times. I realized what I was hearing. Every conversation that had ever occurred in room 12. 300 years of guests, all speaking simultaneously, all their words trapped in the room, repeating endlessly. I tried to focus on individual voices. I heard a man from the 1500s discussing the Queen, a woman from the 1600s praying, a couple from last year arguing about money. All of them present, all of them still in the room somehow. The voices grew louder, hundreds of people speaking, 3 centuries of guests. The sound became overwhelming. I fled the room. But now I understand why room 12 is so quiet during the day. All those voices are there, always. We simply cannot hear them until night, until we are quiet enough, still enough, to hear the echoes of everyone who stayed before. I have closed room 12. I cannot rent it, knowing what it contains, knowing that every word spoken there is preserved, added to the chorus, contributing to the noise. Someday, I suspect, the voices will become loud enough to hear during the day, loud enough that even people passing on the street will hear them. 300 years of conversations, all happening at once, forever. Mr. Edward Marsh, innkeeper, The George Inn, Southwark, London, 26th March, 1738. Archive note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Account found in George Inn records. Room 12 was sealed in 1745. The seal was broken during renovations in 1890. Workers reported hearing an incredible cacophony and resealed the room immediately. It remains closed. End of file. Case file NOA 1526R. Classification: Farmer's Daily Log. Date of statement: 12th September 1526. Location: Wiltshire Downs. Daily log entry: regarding crop circle. I, William Bradford, farmer of Wiltshire, do log events in my wheat field. Yesterday morning, I discovered a perfect circle in my wheat. The stalks were bent, not broken, forming an intricate pattern. I have farmed this land for 30 years. I have never seen anything like this. The circle was precisely 20 feet across. The pattern showed a spiral design, mathematical in its perfection. No human could have created this overnight. The wheat was unharmed, merely bent at the base. as if pressed down by tremendous weight. But there were no footprints, no signs anyone had entered the field. I stood in the center of the circle. The air felt different there, charged somehow. My skin prickled. That night, I watched the field from my window. At midnight, I saw light, not fire, but something else. A soft glow emanating from the ground itself. The circle I had discovered was glowing, pulsing with blue-white light. I dressed and went to investigate. As I approached, the light grew brighter. The wheat stalks were moving, not from wind, but on their own, bending and straightening in waves, creating new patterns. I watched as another circle formed beside the first. The wheat pressed down in perfect curves. No force visible, just the stalks obeying some unseen command. The light pulsed faster, and I heard something, not a sound, but a feeling, like a voice inside my head, speaking without words, showing me images, stars spinning, planets moving in their orbits, patterns repeating across the cosmos. The same spiral in my wheat field existed in the sky, in the shells of snails, in the curl of water going down a drain. The same pattern everywhere, universal. And something was showing me this, teaching me. The light faded at dawn. The new circle remained. Now there were two, perfectly aligned. I told no one about what I saw. Who would believe me? Each night I watch. Each night new circles appear. The patterns grow more complex. The field is filling with geometric designs, beautiful and mysterious. And I'm beginning to understand. Someone is writing in my field, not in words, but in shapes. Messages from something beyond my comprehension, something trying to communicate, using the only language that transcends speech, mathematics, pattern, universal truth. I do not know who creates these circles. I do not know what they are trying to say, but I'm listening. I am watching. I am trying to understand. And each morning, I find my field transformed into a message I am only beginning to read. William Bradford, Farmer, Wiltshire Down. Downs, 12th September 1526 Archive Note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Daily log found in Wiltshire Archives. William Bradford's field was found completely covered in geometric patterns by November 1526. The designs were documented but not preserved. Bradford died in 1527. His final journal entry mentioned finally understanding the message. End of file. Case closed to public record. The original document remains sealed within the vaults of the British Museum. The NOA archive remains committed to documenting phenomena that defy conventional understanding. These cases are submitted for academic review and further investigation. Further access requires written authorization or curiosity strong enough to ignore the warnings. Until next time, these are the National Occult Archives.